the turrets that are on top of Flame Leviathan. And normally we'd want to pick something like 2 mages as quick burst DPS, and say like Ellie Shaman or Enhancement Shaman, or somebody who can, or Shadow Priest even, somebody who can just throw a quick heal if it's even needed. It most likely won't be, but it does happen occasionally. You kill the 3 turrets on top of Flame Leviathan, and there will be an overload that occurs. When an overload occurs, the boss stops moving. And obviously, when he starts moving again, he chooses a different target to follow. And he takes double damage while he is stunned. So during that time, we're wanting to just unload Pyrite stacks. As you can see on the screen here, these little blue floaty deals in the air, these are pyrites. These have to be shot down out of the sky by the passenger of the siege engine, which is not on this screen currently. And he has a machine gun that allows him to shoot them down. The motorcycles will pick them up if they are out of range of the Demolisher's chains, and the motorcycles will pick them up and move them towards the Demolisher so that they can chains them and pick them up. The person that is inside the Demolisher driving, there has to be a passenger with them that allows them to be able to pick up Pyrite. Not only that, but they are able to get launched on top of Flame Leviathan. Of course, unless you're one of those 3 people that we choose during the raid time, you're not going to be one of those people that goes up on Flame Leviathan, so you don't have to worry about it. You can continue shooting or being a passenger and picking up Pyrite, or being a motorcycle driver or a siege engine. Siege engines have 3 abilities as well. As the driver, you are able to do a shove, much like number 3 that you can see down here. And you also have another small ability. I can't remember what the name is, but it silences the boss.
It's electroshock.
Yeah, electroshock. Okay. So basically, flame vents will come out periodically underneath the boss, and he'll just cast raid room-wide damage to every vehicle. Those have to be silenced as quickly as possible to reduce the amount of damage done to every vehicle in the room. Of course, some of the smaller vehicles like motorcycles have a very far less HP, so they can't take a bunch of damage from flame vents. The motorcycles are right around. They'll be picking up the pyrite, but also they can shoot a sonic wave that hits ads as well, so they can help do a little bit of damage to the random ads that crawl around. Mostly it's just lashers and big giant lashers. But there is also a way to start this boss to make it work really well. You normally start it out being the person that is the closest to the boss will shoot the first pyrite stack. It's going to be a demolisher every time. Then they will slowly back up, but we're going to start it in the very corner of this room. You're not able to see it on the screen, but it's going to be over here in this corner of the room when it gets started. All the other demolishers, siege engines are going to bolt towards the boss, of course, but all the other demolishers are going to have to spread out around the boss, because once the boss almost reaches that first person that threw the pyrite stack, then he's going to turn and face someone else. So as he's following that person, everybody else is going to keep their stacks up of pyrite. You can get a maximum of 10 stacks on the boss, which is a initial damage, and it does a burning damage over time. Of course, with the more stacks, the more damage it does. And of course, when overload is happening, you just want to keep on firing pyrite as quickly as possible, because the initial burst damage and him taking 100% more damage is really great.
So now the only part with that is he specifically charges someone for 30 seconds, right? That's
Yes.
not new. It's always guaranteed to be 30 seconds.
Yes.
Okay.
So at the end of that 30 seconds, or when he almost gets to the person that's been slowly backing into the corner, he will change and face another DPS. Just because you're a demolisher that's getting targeted possibly doesn't mean you can let your stacks fall off the boss. You have to be able to turn around, shoot a pyrite, turn back the other direction, or go backwards if you think that it's smart enough, depending on how much time he's still going to follow you for, and shoot pyrite stacks. But You do not want him to let him get close to you if you are targeted, because he does a shove, much like number 3 on the Demolisher, and it hurts like a lot. So you definitely don't want to get hit. You're going to see a couple of people get hit in this fight, but we're just going to go through it, and you're going to hear him explain it the way he explains it as well. But at least you guys got the strategy that we're using. But you'll hear all the mechanics pretty perfectly in here, except for the simple mechanics, like the number 1 ability that you have on a Demolisher. Instead of you stopping DPS after you shoot a Pyrite stack, you can actually use number 1. It throws, it's called Hurl Boulder, I believe, or Boulder Throw, something along those lines. You can use that as like a filler ability to be able to do damage in between waiting for your stacks. Because if you notice on his screen, it'll be on everybody else's screen as well. Wherever you have your debuffs, it might be directly under the boss's name, and you may have all your debuffs turned on in their portrait. I don't know. But it will show the amount of stacks you have and how much time will tick down. It's much like Malagos's stacks for the 3rd phase. It's the same principle. You can only get a max of 10, though. So when he's not in overload, you have to pace yourself and use Hurl Boulder to do damage instead of just unloading your Pyrite constantly. So I just want to make that apparent. Keep your stacks up, but don't overdo it. Unless it's overload, don't keep on throwing number 2.
To our raid guide. My name's Ciderhelm, I'm the administrator of Tankspot.com, and in this video I'll show you our Flame Leviathan 4-tower hard mode strategy. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot.
Tankspot?
Yes, this
is
one
Ciderhelm.
of the original. Yeah.
This is like OG.
Yeah. I use these because they're the best still. And I don't care to hear memes while somebody's trying to explain a boss. So.
Spot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right so you'll be automatically notified as we release new movies. For the purposes of this movie, I'm going to assume that the viewer understands the general functions and abilities of each of the 3 vehicles and understands the functionality of the Flame Leviathan. The 4-tower Flame Leviathan encounter is a highly complex encounter which will test the coordination of your raiders. With all 4 towers active, Flame Leviathan has over 350 million health. The primary goals in this encounter are 1. Keep him overloaded as often as possible, as this increases damage and also reduces his movement speed. 2. Keep 10 stacks of Pyrite rolling on him from all Demolishers as often as possible. 3. Keep him interrupted the moment he casts...
Hey Legion, up the sound a little bit for us, will you?
Yeah, sure, no problem. This is all the way up. Maybe it's the volume that you have me at.
Yeah, because I can hear it good.
Yeah, maybe the volume you have me set at on Discord.
Yeah, it's coming through pretty loud and clear on this end.
Okay.
There is a volume for the stream that you can up as well.
Oh, yep. Thank you.
There you go.
Unnecessary damage at any cost, including a loss of Pyrite stacks. The encounter...
So I want to pause it here because you're seeing something that doesn't make any sense and it's not really explained. These lights coming from the sky, they're not buffs. Don't stand in them. This one happens to focus on a random vehicle, and once it touches that vehicle, 1.5 seconds later, it will freeze that vehicle. So if a light's coming towards you, keep moving, because as soon as it stops you, it will stop. And while you keep moving, you'll move out of whatever effect it brings. The fire does the same thing. It lights oil on fire on the ground. It also lights, it does damage to a vehicle if it's inside of it. And the green ones just spawn ads. So you don't have to really worry about those. They're randomly going to come no matter what. The freeze is the worst thing. The fire isn't as bad at all. But the freeze, 5 seconds of being frozen, you're probably going to lose your Pyrite stacks on the boss. So that's what makes it detrimental. It's the only real light you need to worry about is the blue one.
The encounter has a soft and rage mechanic due to the constant AoE damage going out throughout the encounter. Choppers will be the first vehicles to be destroyed from this, and they'll often go down before the encounter is finished. In our strategy, we use 5 demolishers but only 4 siege engines and choppers. By doing this, we have 3 extra players who we can cycle for launches on Flame Leviathan. 3 of our demolishers and 3 of our choppers are responsible for launch teams. Our launch teams consist of 2 groups of 3 players each, one of which will be on Flame Leviathan at any given time, and the other of which will be acting as demolisher gunners who are able to keep pyrites supplied for the driver. In general, each of these 2 groups will consist of 1 hybrid DPS healer and 2 ranged DPS, ideally mages. The advantage to mages is that
As you see, this demolisher didn't move out quick enough and he got frozen while he was trying to charge away. He used the ability 0.1 second too late. So, and demolishers siege engines are kind of slow, so.
they can blink away towards their demolishers again once the Flame Leviathan turrets have been destroyed. The DPS healer is responsible for throwing a quick heal to the other 2 players while on Flame Leviathan, only if their health is low. Also, if this is a shaman, they can provide a heroism on one of the earlier launches. When an overload is nearing, choppers go near Flame Leviathan and watch for their assigned player to be launched off of the Leviathan. Though in many cases the demolishers can be near enough that a player does not need to be picked up, there are frequently times when it is advantageous to do so. Players who are launched but cannot blink should cancel their parachutes quickly and enter the chopper to receive a quick heal. The chopper needs to return the DPSer to the assigned demolisher and stay directly on top of the demolisher until the passenger has been transferred. Moving even a small distance away too soon can prevent the passenger from being able to jump from one vehicle to the next. Generally, we prefer to have the current demolisher gunners wait until the moment overload ends before they jump into the launch position. This allows the demolisher to maximize DPS during the overload, and as the player in the launch position will lock out abilities and cannot be launched early, this is the best way of handling this. As soon as a demolisher gunner switches into the launch position, the passenger in the chopper jumps into the vehicle and takes on his responsibilities. To keep a very smooth transition between choppers and demolishers, we assign raid icons to each of the 2 launch players assigned to a demolisher. Choppers are expected to remember the 2 icons for the demolisher they are transporting to. At any given time, one of those icons should be on Flame Leviathan or in the passenger seat, and one of them should be in the demolisher. For a small boost in DPS, we launch our first launch team immediately at the beginning of the encounter. We also launch a 4th player from a demolisher without a rotation who will help out only on the first overload. After this point, that player will return to his or her vehicle without the assistance of a chopper and will not be launched again. Since each demolisher starts with 10 pyrite launches available, you can expect to knock off between 10% and 18% of Flame Leviathan's health up to and through the first overload. Also, since the first overload will come quicker than the rest due to the 4th player, the first target he pursues should not be reached if they stay in the corner where the encounter begins. For DPS reasons, the 2 demolishers who are not launching players are the 2 players with the highest average eye level in the raid. This allows more flexibility throughout the encounter to be near pyrite, and allows for the maximum potential DPS from players who can deal the most damage. Finally, during times when pyrite is scarce, spacing out pyrite shots with hurl boulders is a good pacing mechanism. It's generally best to fire faster during overloads, though, because the pyrite also does damage on impact. Thanks for watching this movie. As always, feel free to ask questions or add suggestions either on YouTube or in the strategy thread on tankspot.com. Also, TankSpot donors can download all of these movies in high definition directly from our servers. Click the second link in the movie information box to learn more.
They made this video about the same time they built the pyramids, right?
Yeah, just about.
That's one of the old school ones from TankSpot, yeah. I mean,
so one of the other things I forgot to mention during this is that the driver of a demolisher also has a speed boost ability that, or not the driver, the passenger can use the speed boost ability to make the demolisher move quicker. So that's why you've seen this guy right here move really quickly away from the boss. Normally, you don't move that fast. This is Ignis. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to use 3 tanks for this, just because there's a tank swap and it's it isn't inevitable that the tank could get picked up. I've seen it happen before, If we get lucky, it won't happen, but we'll have to keep all 3 of our tanks up, basically. The third tank is an optional tank. Basically, these little golems on the sides here, they do become active during the fight. Hunters can pull them. Mages can pull them with blink and, being able to move quickly and properly to position them. And it's a risk, though. I'd rather not take it. It's a very, very easy boss, though. You basically just tank the boss at 4 separate quadrants. They're kind of split apart. If you look at this line in the middle of the room and you look at this line in the middle of the room, these are the 4 different quadrants that you have. You basically tank it facing one of these 4 directions so that the fire gets spit there. Every time the adds become active, the other tank has to pick the add up, run it through the fire to get it molten, and then run it into the water to make it brittle. And then anybody can basically one-shot them with a couple of ice lances or a hunter's arcane shot, aim shot. Anything works, and we'll probably end up having Snizzard do that.
Yes, Snizzard.
Always picking on the old guy.
But yeah, it's pretty easy. Just tank them in the 4 corners, depending on where you want the fire to land. Take the adds through it. You're basically DPSing. He picks somebody up and puts them in the pot. They can keep on casting if they're a caster. They can keep on DPSing if they're a melee, and they can keep on DPSing if they're a tank. It's not as often that a tank gets picked up, but I've seen it happen, so that's the reason why I'd rather just keep 2 on it. Because the other tank will be able to taunt the boss if it just so happens they get picked up. And here we go.
Ulduar
We're planning on having Lil B be one of the people that can blow up the constructs too. So
Okay.
we can have Lil B, we have Polar, and Snizzard, I'm guessing, can easily hit 5k in a global.
Yeah, pretty quick. They don't have very much health, so I mean, I think Snizzard and one other put on it would be perfect.
Cool.
Basically, for an arcane mage, it's going to be a arcane arcane barrage, and a hunter, it's going to be arcane shot, and that's basically going to kill it. Or if they're close enough, the mage could fire blast and kill it as well.
My name's Cyberhelm. I'm the administrator.
What's that? Sorry.
What about shocks?
You're going to be too far.
Can you hit 5k in a single blast?
With a maelstrom, maybe?
Yeah, but you're going to be too far as an enhancement shaman. You're going to be on the boss 100%. You're going to be way too out of range. If you notice, it's quite a big room.
Oh, yeah, I've done the fight. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you could do it. It's just, I don't think it'd be worth it for you.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you fuck up, Bert, you're going in the soup pot. Right on the spoon.
Hey, you're not my
Soup
real
pot?
The soup pot.
All right, here we go.
Administrator of Tankspot.com, and in this video I'll show you our Ignis strategy. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot.
Is this like a 2002 video or some shit or something?
Raid movement than most
Yeah, it's OG for Tankspot.
However, he has a series of unique abilities that have to be coordinated through the length of the encounter in order to successfully bring him down. The first ability I'll cover is called Slag Pot. Ignis will grab one of your raid members and throw them into the pot sitting on his belly. This causes high damage to the player and it must be healed through. It's important to note that the player inside the slag pot is...
What's that?
Nothing.
You can heal yourself through the pot, can't you?
Yeah, you can. I don't think it'll be needed though. I mean, we got 5 healers. I think we'll be okay. Also,
Do we have an actual roster now for 25?
Hell
Yeah.
You do? Oh, okay.
It's linked in officer.
Yep. Also, one other thing I didn't quite mention in the fight is you see where he casts flame jets and everybody got knocked up in the air. If you're a caster, you cannot be casting whenever you cast that because it doesn't just knock you up, it also silences you.
I'm sure there's a weak
to
one
the
for
player.
that too.
Yeah, there probably will be in a few days. Like, probably not the first day though.
Mm-hmm.
In DBM might not be very useful either, but we'll see.
and it must be healed through. It's important to note that the player inside the slag pot is capable of healing themselves as well. Also, because of the random targeting of the slag pot, players handling other parts of the encounter such as Iron Construct should have backups to handle their roles in an emergency. The second ability I'll cover is called Flame Jets. This is an ability that Ignis casts which launches players into the air. Additionally, any player who is casting a spell when Flame Jets finishes casting is temporarily locked out of that school of magic. It is absolutely critical that casters, especially healers, are not locked out by this, so they should be paying special attention to Flame Jet casts from Ignis.
Yeah, that's me.
The third ability I'll cover is called Scorch. This is a frontal AoE ability that will leave the stones in front of him burning. It is important that the raid avoid standing in front of Ignis for this reason, and it is important that the tank move out of this as much as possible. In this movie, you will notice that I'm moving Ignis in a 4-point path when dealing with Scorch. We chose this path in part because it is an easy-to-remember path that our DPS and healers can stay between, and because if Ignis runs to a player to put them in the slag pot, he will come back to the appropriate corner immediately afterwards. This path also allowed reliable use of the Scorch Flame Patches for players handling Iron Constructs. The Iron Constructs are immobile and untargetable enemies you will see along the left and right side when you enter the room. When Ignis is engaged, he will begin bringing these to life. While alive, Iron Constructs will provide Ignis with a stacking damage buff. If too many Iron Constructs are alive, the tank handling Ignis will no longer be able to be reliably healed. For this reason, the Iron Constructs must be dealt with immediately. When an Iron Construct spawns, a player should pick it up and move it over to the Scorch Flame Patches. Here they will slowly become molten. Since the flames deal considerable damage to anyone inside them, it is best that they are rooted in place by a druid once they've been positioned, so the player picking them up can leave. Once an Iron Construct becomes molten, it drops aggro. The player, ideally the druid that was rooting them, should break them free and use the aggro to drag them into the nearby pools of water.
Yes. How
Molten
crazy are the
constructs
ads
that
in
reach the water
BTW?
become brittle. Once brittle, they are
One more
immobile
time,
and take
Bert.
additional damage.
How crazy are the ads? How big are they? Are they like they hit a fuck ton or like?
They're right here. You can see.
Yeah,
the-
I know.
the
I see them. I'm just
constructs,
like,
but they hit like a truck.
do they? Okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
curious.
So basically, you can't sit and eat them for too long. Like the tank that's got to pull them into the flame patches, that's completely fine. I'd rather not put a DPS or a druid on it, even though that they suggest that here. We never did that as the top guild in it either. So it was just a DPS loss or a heal loss, you know?
You do a tank plus a entangling roots or a slow or a snare or something like that, and we're gonna be fine.
Yeah,
Does Earthbind affect that or no?
it does, but you're going to be way too out of range.
Is this a situation where we would be able to rely on chains of ice?
Chains of Ice works very well on this fight. That's what we used, so
Okay.
it's just pretty easy to Chains of Ice it as a DK. It makes it to where if you're the ad tank as a DK, that's like really
Beneficial.
ideal.
Yeah.
It's ideal because then you get rid of the factor of using like roots and Earthbind totems and shit like that. That was our plan to begin with, but yeah,
Could,
good
out
bringing that
of
up.
curiosity, could a warrior be okay on an off tank for that? Just because of I don't know. I can't remember if I can't. Yeah, but that it wouldn't last long enough, right?
They can, but it wouldn't last long enough. That's the
Okay.
only downside to it.
Yeah.
At least the DK can literally run through the fire, thing, and then Chains of Ice it while he's still running out of the fire, so he doesn't have to stand in it.
I can't remember if Thunderclap and Prot slows or not.
It does. It does.
It does? Okay.
What
Yeah,
about
just,
concussive shot?
It does, but you're a DPS loss. We're trying to keep DPS losses at a minimum. So we're trying not to have any external. So the best ad tank would be a DK just for this case.
Even a DPS DK?
I mean, yeah, you could do it technically. It would just be a DPS loss.
Sure.
I'd rather have you on the boss.
Yeah, 100%. I was just curious. I'm just curious. Is all.
Yeah. It works. I mean, I've seen feral druids do it. So
with fairy fire and entangling roots.
yeah, well, not fairy fire. They run up to it in bear form. They charge it and they smack it a couple times, then they run away. As soon as they get out of melee range, they just sprint right through the fire, and then or just
Oh,
run
okay.
through the fire, and then they just entangling roots it while it's running through the fire. It's just
Okay.
it's too many more steps. I see. That's why I simplify some of this stuff, is because these are old strategies and they've upgraded, and they even didn't give you the strategies that some of the higher guilds were using, which was a tank DK, because they're just way better than anyone else and no DPS loss. So
Gotcha.
They require only a single high damage attack to be destroyed. To guarantee damage is sufficient, we had a mage assigned to taking care of the brittle constructs. After the construct has been destroyed, Ignis loses 1 stack of his damage buff. In this kill, we had a single feral druid handling the first iron construct to spawn, and a moonkin and protection warrior handling the second iron construct to spawn. They alternated every other construct from then on. Killing Ignis is entirely a matter of control and endurance. Once players learn the encounter, this should be one of the most reliable encounters to clear each week in Ulduar. Thanks for watching this movie. As always,
It doesn't seem
feel
bad
free
at
to
all.
no, it's
No,
not.
Ignis will be really
is this
easy.
like
This is
loot
one of the
pinata
easiest
for
bosses.
weapon spending?
Okay.
What'd you say?
It's a loot pinata.
Is this
Yeah.
like yeah?
It's a loot pinata.
How bad is melee to range in Ulduar? Like, is it worse for melee or is it worse for range?
Depends on the boss, but
Okay.
if you're talking about like Memoron, melee. It's way
Oh
worse
yeah,
for
well,
you guys.
I remember that. That was terrible.
Yeah, it's way worse for you guys. If you're talking about like Razor Scale, then it's worse for ranged, because they're the ones that get hit by flames more than melee does. They're just a higher priority target for the boss. I don't know why.
I mean, the first 3 bosses are pretty. I mean, we're doing Razor Scale, Flame, Leviathan, and then
Ignis.
the Ignis, right? Yeah, those are the
Yeah.
first 3, right?
Yeah, the first one would be Flame Leviathan. We are doing hard mode, so we're probably going to wipe once or twice, but
Put your
I
pants on.
expect that. Yeah, I expect that. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, those 3 are like the easiest bosses. I think the only one that's just as easy is Araya. She's also just a loot pinata.
That's the
as
crazy
long as-
cat lady after the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can, if everybody's cool with it, I'd like to just get the crazy cat lady achievement the first week.
Yeah, I'm
because
down.
Sure.
I don't think we'll have a problem. I'm pretty sure, Vert, you are going to be okay with watching a cast bar on the boss and dropping your Trinimar totem right before she fears,
You can do that.
so that
100%.
it does the first tick and everybody's out of fear and still stacked in the same place. So,
But Tremor Totem's
confident.
weird right now, man. Like, do you know the actual tick time as soon as it drops? Is it
yeah,
instant?
it's 0.5 seconds.
0.5 after it drops?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can do that. I'll just throw it on a quick bar. It's fine.
Yeah, you just like you watch her cast, and as she's casting it, right before it goes off, you just drop that, and we're out of the fear. So
I can
that's
do
the
that.
easiest way to get that achievement. We can kill the cats that are with her, and we can kill the very small ones. We just can't kill the big guardian that spawns. That's it.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm excited, dude. I'm fucking pumped, dude. I'm so pumped.
Yeah, we're all excited.
Dude, I'm so excited, you guys. Sorry, I've had a few whiskeys.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I'm drinking beers,
I'm
so
talking.
I get you.
I'm getting talkative. Talking.
Got me some Duffies.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're here, Vert.
You're not my real dad. Shut up.
But you still call me daddy.
Actually,
Fuck you-
Braddock
fuck you,
is your
Pelson.
daddy.
All right,
Fuck
so
Pelson.
I'm raid daddy.
so this boss is going to be you again, Snizzard. You're going to be on the catapults here. You're going to get those first week, and we're going to put Hisoka on him next week. So you guys are going to trade, because I want you guys both to be able to get a good parse on this boss. So
See, nowhere in the videos did I hear anyone say anything about using the snizzard. So
well,
True.
we got a Snizzard skill here, so we got to utilize it when we can, and we got a Hisoka skill too. You guys are both going to be swapping on Ignis, by the way.
no,
too.
I'm just joking. I don't mind.
I'm just letting you know. I'm going to spread it around. It's not going to be like spiders and knacks where I could only trust you to do it. So, all right, here we go. Basically, he's going to explain most of it. There's really nothing that I could say that he's not going to tell you already on this boss. we're basically going to do it by the book, by what he says. If you want to get the hard mode for this boss, it's not really a hard mode, it's an achievement. You just have to bring the boss down and get him to 50% the first time it comes down. So we are not going to do that first week. We don't have the damage to do it. We're not even going to hit through tit. So
there is the other achievement too of getting the as deep breathed, but I don't think that's a priority either. And we can do that over the course of multiple weeks.
Yeah, it's a really kind of a whack achievement compared to some of the other ones that are a little bit more challenging. Like Deer, you have to get every one of the buffs in a week or in, a different raid probably. But we're going to try to always do hard mode, so that's going to be another annoying achievement for people because they just may not get lucky for it to spawn next to them, and they can't move towards it because they're stuck to the moonlight. So here we go.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. My name's Ciderhelm, I'm the administrator of Tankspot.com, and in this video I'll show you our razor scale strategy. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info in the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot.
I guess there is only one thing I can't add to this. There's 7 spawn locations. Tanks are going to memorize those by just repetitively doing the fights. So you're going to know where stuff spawns and know where your sweet spot that you need to stand at to be able to run to any of the directions on a queue.
For the dwarves?
Positioning the raid in a smart way helps.
Yeah, there's 7 spots where the Dark Iron Dwarf drills come up.
Okay.
Yeah, so people will figure it out over time where they come from and where not to stand because it might spawn right there, and where tanks should stand to be a sweet spot to run.
It looks like a circle, isn't it?
It's only in this section they spawn here, and a little bit off camera over here. So it's only this semicircle area that they spawn in.
We're effectively just going to assign a left tank and a right tank. We might do a third, but I doubt it.
I think it's just going to be 2.
Yeah.
Helps with this encounter. On the cliff side of the platform, which is opposite of the harpoons and your dwarven allies when you enter the room, is where enemies will enter the encounter through the use of mole machines. This is where we chose to fight them. Relative to where I'm standing, several guardians and watchers will usually enter in random locations on both the left and right sides. Because of this, we have 1 tank per side dedicated to picking up these adds, and 2 separate melee DPS groups to help bring these down. Our ranged DPS and healers are spread in between the left and right sides so they can assist on either side depending on what is needed. Since healers generally get initial aggro if a tank doesn't get to adds in time, healers being in the middle rather than surrounding the mole locations allows the tanks to have a general idea which way enemies will run when they enter the encounter. However, some enemies will head directly for the harpoons to attack the dwarves, so you need to keep this in mind. Watchers are significantly more dangerous than guardians and should be the immediate focus of your raid DPS. Additionally, we have 2 dedicated interrupters per side to target and prevent each watcher from casting Chain Lightning. Since watchers can also cast Lightning Bolt, it's important to pay attention to the cast bar and save interrupts for the Chain Lightning. Other players are also helping to interrupt the Chain Lightning whenever possible. Guardians should be killed after watchers and cleared up any time it is possible to do so. However, they can be off-tanked in the event that DPS needs to be focused elsewhere. You'll notice we've been receiving messages about harpoons being ready. Now that we've been notified that 3 of the 4 harpoons are ready to be used, one of our raid members, in this case a hunter, heads back to begin using them. The harpoons are the key to opening razor scale to your DPS. Once all 4 have been activated, your dwarven allies will be able to pin her to the ground. However, razor scale will be able to break free from her captors after a short period, so DPS only has a short window of time to bring her down. To accommodate this, we have one of our DPSers that is interrupting watchers, telling our hunter, who's handling the final harpoon, when all of the watchers have been killed. This signals to the hunter that the final harpoon should be shot immediately, and it signals to the raid to immediately move to the center to get damage on razor scale. When razor scale touches the ground, the encounter becomes a burn phase. Our goal is to reach at least 75% before she flies back up in the air. We burn heroism the first time she's down on the ground because we're more likely to have all of our DPSs alive at this point.
DPS.
It's my dream, dude. It's my dream.
Only because there's so many damn ads. It'll be your only chance to shine in this raid.
Thanks.
You can do it.
Before she can fly up into the air again, she will use a high damage flame breath in order to destroy the turrets that are keeping her grounded. For this reason, players should make sure they are behind her. When she's done, she will use a wing buffet to knock the raid away from her, and the mole machine phase will begin again.
Well, she dropped twice? I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought
Also,
once you
She's only
grounded
down
her,
for
I
like
thought
30
she was just on the
seconds, yeah.
ground.
No.
you gotta get her to 50% health before she stays
It's grounded.
ground.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, once she hits 50%. So that's why the achievement is to get her to 50% the first time she comes down, which is hard. You need
Okay.
gear to do it. So that's the reason why we're not going to attempt it, because we just don't have the gear. Even if everybody DPS perfectly, I don't think it would happen.
And I think we have 10 minutes now, not 15, right? 10
Yeah,
minutes still in rage, yeah. So we got to kill it in two times, though, right? The second time we have to get
has
keep her
to.
down.
Yep, has to get to.
Oh, mandatory wipe if we. This is a DPS
Yeah.
check.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Big time.
Oh
Yeah.
fuck me, dude. I'm fucked. You guys are screwed, dude. Find a new enhancement shaman, you guys. I'm not gonna lie.
You'll be good. You'll be good on ads. One other
And,
thing that I didn't mention, and he didn't mention either. Once all those watchers die, any remaining ads that are up get dragged to the boss. So they get cleaved while we're killing her. So that's little tank tip.
And I want to say, I know I told Ren, I believe Devouring Flame is no longer considered magic. It's undefined, so you can't AMS it.
Yep. You can still AMS the fire on
The ground.
well, yeah, that too, but on Ignis you could still AMS the fire patches, so when you're running through them you can at least mitigate something, so that's good.
There's a third type of enemy called a Sentinel, which will spawn exclusively from the middle between the left and right sides. This is what I'm tanking in this movie. These are random spawns and may come frequently or rarely, and in the case of this movie, there are very few that have spawned, so I'm just standing around for most of this. Sentinels deal a large amount of single target damage and whirlwind damage. They also gain a buff which allows them to do significantly more damage, making it ideal to use either a warrior for shield slam, or another classic and purge it. Sentinels need to be killed by the ranged as soon as possible and are priority over any other enemy in the room. Since they will normally occupy the area where ranged and healers are, it's important that people pay attention and move away from them when they spawn. Throughout the air phase...
He didn't mention it, but melee you can't touch Sentinels. They
it's gonna be
fucking
range
destroy
only.
you. Yeah, they will fucking destroy you.
Wow, I don't want to touch him anyway.
You had me at this is just range.
Yeah, I'm with you, baby. I'm with you,
I got you, baby.
phases of this encounter, Razor Scale is casting fireballs and devouring flames onto the ground. The devouring flames look like blue streaks coming from the air that leave a small blue ball on the ground, which immediately bursts into AoE fire patches. With particle effects set to a low setting, some players will not be able to see streaks, and will need to pay special attention to the ground around them. These fire patches deal significant damage and should be treated like void zones.
Now, hey, each time that it says a harpoon is ready, am I supposed to go shoot it or what?
No. You're going to wait until 4 of them are ready. If you can look here, you can actually see, and it's going to pop up on the screen here, harpoon is ready. Even without DBM being updated, this pops up inside the raid. There's a couple other things that pop up in the raid, like Ignis's bullshit where he knocks you up in the sky and blah, blah, blah. But if you see, this is a turret that's ready. This is one that's down. So they fix all 4 of them. Then
I go to what?
You can go back there once 3 are ready, and then while you're back there clicking, then the 4th one will probably be up a few seconds later, and then you can click that one, call it out.
There's literally an
and they'll
animation,
go.
isn't there?
Yeah.
Or a shout out, like from like it's not like an
Right
RP,
here.
an
Right
RP
here.
or something.
Right here, you can see it.
DBM will yell it, yeah.
Well, without DBM, this
Even
shows
better.
up. Right. Yep. And it also shows up in chat as a yellow something.
Yeah, I think it's an RP. I think the dwarf shouts out that it's ready or something.
Yeah, probably. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, you can run back there once you see harpoon turrets ready 3 times. Then you can stop DPSing and run over there and get ready. We've only got to really make sure that the Watchers are dead and the Sentinels are dead. There probably won't be any Sentinels up because they don't spawn as often as anything else. But
so to double check here, Watchers are the casters, melee prioritize and interrupt. Sentinel is range priority and burn it down and it cleaves.
Yeah, and Guardians are just anybody.
Guardians
Anybody
are
with
plebs.
Guardians, yeah.
They're the putties.
Yeah, they're just they look like the regular Dark Iron Dwarves that you see in UBRS.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't do no abilities. Like I think they do heroic strike or some dumb shit. Like nothing.
Easy enough.
Yep.
So who does melee focus interrupts on?
Watcher.
Chain lightning.
Watchers on chain lightning, yeah. The other cast they do is lightning bolt, and it doesn't do shit.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like 1,000 damage or something like that. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah, it's nothing. All right, here we go.
I dig the music. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's fucking super chill, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I used to love watching these videos back in the day. It was Cider Helm, and then when Lore started doing the voiceovers.
Everybody watched these back in the day, man. It was just
I
what
think-
everybody did.
I think there's a lore video in here actually.
I actually need to do. I need to do a lore recap because I haven't paid too much attention to anything this.
No, like when I say lore, I mean Devo lore, the person.
When Razor Scale touches the ground a
My bad.
second
Yeah,
time, our
that's
goal
who
is
I'm
to bring her
talking about
below
too, man.
50% before she can
My
fly
bad.
back up.
I actually
At
know
this
both
point,
of
she
those
is
guys.
permanently grounded and becomes a DPS race. She will still use her Flame Breath and Wing Buffet, but will now gain 2 more abilities. First, she will frequently apply Flame Buffet to the entire raid, a stacking debuff that increases fire damage taken. Second, she will apply Fuse Armor to the tank, a stacking debuff which slows the tank and decreases armor and attack speed. The Flame Buffet acts as an enrage timer. Too many of these and players will simply not be able to survive her outgoing attacks. Fuse Armor, however, can be handled by having tanks switch aggro with each other and using shield wall abilities as needed. In this movie, one of our tanks taunts off of me and continues to move her around the platform. Once my debuffs have worn off, I'll pick her back up. In addition to these abilities, she will still leave patches of flame on the platform. The movement speed debuff of her Fuse Armor can put the tank in a position where they are unable to avoid these flames. For this reason,
If you guys notice, melee, you guys are not following right behind the boss. You guys are on the right leg down here. So
Yeah, it's a dragon. Dragons
Yeah.
have tail swipes.
Yep. Well, no tail swipes. You're standing in the fire if you're behind her.
Don't tell the DPS that!
You just die.
Dragons have tail swipes. You stand on their side.
It's like 2 ticks.
I thought that was just given.
it is doubly important to have tank switches occurring.
And that Fuse Armor is targeted one target. It isn't a frontal cone or anything. Both tanks can just stand in front.
No, you gotta stand to the side.
Stand to the side. Once Fuse Armor happens, swap positions, taunt,
Yep.
continue on. Cool.
Yep. Because the downside about it is if you guys both get the debuff, it's gonna be rough. So normally these guys are doing it a different way. Their first tank took 5 stacks with a GA, and we probably won't do that. We're going to do 3 stacks and swap because it's just as easy and it's less risky.
So the second tank was not in position before he taunted. That's why the boss moved.
Exactly. And he also took 4 stacks of melt armor instead of switching at 3. So it's just too risky doing 4.
We can do it at 3. That's not a big deal.
Thanks for watching this movie. As always, feel free to ask questions.
Alright. And that's that. Alright, so Deconstructor. This one we're going to have to wait a while for hard mode, but we're just going to see hard mode. The normal mechanics are much the same, except for they don't leave void zones or spawn ads. So we're just going to watch this. This one, I don't think many guilds on the server have the DPS to kill the heart before to even engage the hard mode. So we're not even going to attempt it.
Hi, I'm Lore from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be
Told you there was a lower one.
I figured there would be, yeah.
guiding you through the XT002 Heartbreaker hard mode achievement.
I found about when he got he was on
Hard mode is
Gamebreaker
activated.
for a few years. That was really nice. Used to watch him on that fucking thing before he became a community manager. We can keep going. Sorry.
All right.
By killing the heart of the Deconstructor, so the fight begins as normal. You may notice a difference in positioning from our previous XT002 videos. This is because if he's standing close enough to a scrap pile, he won't spawn any robots from that pile during the heart phases. So, by tanking him directly between 2 piles on either side of the room, you can greatly reduce the number of ads you need to deal with. Once he's reached 75%, the heart will appear. This is the major DPS check of the encounter. You'll have 30 seconds to burn through 7.2 million health. All DPS cooldowns, including Bloodlust or Heroism, should be used at this point. There shouldn't be much healing necessary for the time being, so your healers should be free to help out as well. Once the heart is destroyed, hard mode begins. He'll be healed back to full and his health and damage will be increased. From here on, the fight becomes very tough on the healers to keep everyone alive, particularly during tantrums. It can be very helpful to have paladins use Divine Sacrifice during tantrums to help lower the raid-wide damage. His 2 main abilities, Gravity Bomb and Light Bomb, receive some new effects as well. When Gravity Bomb explodes, it will leave a void zone on the ground. Light Bomb, in addition to dealing more damage while it's on a player, will spawn a life spark when it runs out. This needs to be tanked and killed immediately, as it has a raid-wide aura that deals a significant amount of nature damage.
So he doesn't really mention it, but these bomb bots, they explode when they die, so ranged kill those. Melee kill the construction bots that are coming in, and you can AoE the small little construction bots that come as well. The downside about these ads is that they can't touch the boss. If they ever touch the boss, it enrages him and he just destroys everybody. So that's the reason why we have to even DPS them in the first place before they get to him. Only two of these ads are aggroable, which are the construction bots and the small construction bots. The scrap or the bomb bots aren't. Can't aggro those.
So now when I was looking at this, isn't there a way that we can like slow the bomb bots so that they're in pace with the little ones that kill the bombs and then it kills the little ads as well?
It depends on their spawn time. Since they're pulling it in hard mode, which will likely pull it in hard mode every time just to get used to it, because there's no real reason to pull them in the middle of the room and just do it the bad guild way.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of going left wall. Yeah, this is fine.
So, yeah, normally the range are able to blizzard them.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're probably not going to have any actual frost mages because given frost does a lot of DPS in Ulduar, they're still not as good as anything else. So We do have a boomkin, which is nice, so Starfall will come really in handy for a lot of the waves of the ads that are coming, at least when it's not on hard mode. But yeah, it's just going to be like hunters and the Shadow Priests don't really need to switch sides unless they want to use Mind Seer. That's really it for the small ones, but the bigger ones, they're going to be taken care of by melee, and the bomb bots can be killed by range. I think they got like 12k health or something. They don't have very much health. They're not very, very hard to kill.
So we're going to be asking melee to peel off the boss to kill those things?
Just the big ones here. But they should be pretty close to the boss, so some people will still get cleave damage. Like Whirlwind from Warriors, Consecrate from Paladins. They're kind of bad position, these Consecrates, but these might also be tank Consecrates too. So if you notice the light bomb over there, that one you have to run to the right. Even if we're not doing it on hard mode, whenever it blows up or it drops off, the debuff drops off the target, it spawns an ad that the off tank has to pick up. That's not going to happen in normal mode. It's just going to fade, and that'll be it. If you're ranged and you go over there, great. If you're melee, then it kind of sucks because you're not getting any damage on the boss. The black holes over here, these are from the shadow debuff that he puts on you. If you get that, you have to run to the left. And what it does is it does a gravity well. It grabs people that are around you, kind of like a mass death grip in all directions, but it's only about 7 yards or so. So dropping it over here will spawn a black hole underneath you. So, of course, if you're a melee, you want to run as far as you can. And if you're ranged, you want to run as far as you can over to the left. Just so when it drops, you don't stack too many, because they stay here for the remainder of the fight. This first one that was dropped is kind of a bad positioning for it. That person tried to get as much DPS as they could before they started running. So this one's really close in comparison to some of the rest of them that you'll see.
Damage every few seconds. To help deal with these new effects, we have the ranged DPS and healers stack up in one group with the melee grouped up on the boss. When someone gets gravity bombed, they run to the left, where the void zone can be placed a safe distance away from the group. When someone gets light bombed, they run to the right, just far enough to avoid hitting the rest of the group. Players with light bomb should try not to run too far to give the life spark tank an easier time picking them up. It's also important for players with light bomb to give the tank time to pick up the life spark before doing anything that would pull aggro. It should usually start moving toward one of the healers still in the group, but it does deal a very large amount of nature damage as a melee attack. It's very easy for them to one-shot a non-tank if they're not careful. Nature Resistance Totem or Aspect of the Wild can help a lot to mitigate this damage as well as their raid-wide aura.
And you notice that guy with light bomb ran to the left? That was kind of a fuck up, because if gravity bomb came out at the same time, he would be in an awful spot for whoever's trying to run the gravity bomb out.
So you just say light to the right, basically?
Yeah, light to the right, gravity to the left.
Once you've gotten the basics down, finishing the encounter is mostly a matter of just killing life sparks quickly and keeping everything under control. He does have a 10-minute enrage timer, but as long as you have the DPS capable of killing the heart and can keep everyone alive through the rest of the fight, you should be able to get him down before the enrage.
Just as a side note, whenever I went to go pick up beer tonight, because I did it right before we started this, the guy at the drive-through asked me for my ID, so that was kind of cool. I haven't been asked for my ID in a while. It's probably because I shaved.
You're in a drive-through?
Yeah, we got drive-through places here that you can go and buy beer and whatever.
Cigarettes.
Must not be
here.
Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, sure, if you're a smoker, I don't smoke cigarettes, so I don't know.
Yeah, here in Tennessee we have those too. With that, you can get cigarettes and beer. I don't do either, so.
Was there anything else on this one, or should we fast forward?
Yeah, I think that's really about it at this point. I think people have seen what's going on here enough. Yeah, that's basically the entire fight. It's a rinse and repeat until you die or it dies, one of the two.
Cool.
Yeah. Iron Council. This one's done one of 3 ways, but only really 2 of them are viable. So there's 3 bosses here. You kill the spellcaster, you kill the melee guy, and then you kill the big guy last. That's hard mode. Now, if you kill the big guy first, kill the melee guy, and then kill the spellcaster, that's easy mode. The reason why, instead of doing it the opposite way and killing the melee guy, is because the melee guy casts runes constantly on the other boss, so it's awful. You don't want that extra damage. Plus, the spellcaster is very easily interrupted with pummel or kick or counter spell, whatever. So basically, if you've ever done Halls of Stone, you know what mechanic this is. He does a whirlwind ability, kind of like the mobs in the room right before you kill the last boss in Halls of Stone that do the whirlwind that shoots the lightning bolts towards people. That's basically what he does, except for it annihilates melee first and then everybody else. So basically interrupts has got to be on point, and that's really easy mode. Hard mode is just the opposite. It's basically tanks get to spend money on repair bills. So basically there's a 3 tank rotation and they die no matter what. There's nothing we can do about it. They die. There's nothing you can't even divine intervention them. They just die. There is one little caveat to that. You can kind of get lucky sometimes and trick the boss with an ice block if you have a mage, if all the tanks die. And you have a mage that can ice block, can double ice block if they're a frost mage, but unfortunately that GCD isn't always reliable with the boss's melee attacks, so it could kill them while they're doing, trying to reset their ice block. But yeah, we'll see.
For first week, we're not going to try for hard mode on this one, right?
Nope. The idea is to just do Flame Leviathan and Hodir,
cool.
Which is just a high level and then a DPS race, and then do an attempt or 2 on Thorum. That is it.
Good.
And then the rest of the bosses are normal.
Cool.
We doing one Yogg or?
Yeah, you wish, right?
Come on, man.
Come on, man. You just want a weapon, right?
Am I?
All right. Here we go.
To our raid guide. My name's Ciderhelm. I'm the administrator of Tankspot.com, and in this video I'll show you our Iron Council hard mode strategy. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right so you'll be automatically notified as we release new movies. Killing Steelbreaker last is a patchwork-style DPS race with enormous raid healing requirements. We found the best balance was to bring 2 tanks and 5 to 6 healers to the encounter. Additionally, 2 non-tanking paladins with Divine Sacrifice are extremely valuable. During the Steelbreaker phase...
So he's not really going to explain any of the normal mode mechanics. As you see, the chain lightning that randomly Brundir will cast on a player, that's interruptible with Mind Freeze, Strangulate. Ideally, we'd want to put the DK on this for positioning. Even if we're doing easy mode and we're killing him last, they can interrupt the most frequently, besides Rogue, of course. This guy, Mulgum, he drops a rune. What's that?
Can I kick that?
Yeah, you can, but you just won't be over there. You're going to be on the big guy over here. We're showing hard mode, but we're gonna do easy mode first. We're gonna kill the big guy, then we're gonna kill, we're gonna kill Rune Master Mulgum after we kill the big guy, and then we're gonna kill the small guy. He's the little spellcaster, so you're gonna get plenty of interrupts in the third phase of the fight.
What about silencing shot? Will that help?
Yeah, you can do that too. I wouldn't waste a GCD with all our DKs and warriors and rogues, but yeah, you can do that. Amalgam puts this little rune on the ground. Basically, if he does photon punch or iron punch or whatever the fuck,
fusion punch. It's a nature-based attack.
Yeah, it's a nature-based attack. But he does a butthole punch, and he's standing in that. You're fucking dead. Like, he hits you for a ton of HP. It's like 40 something K. So yeah, we always want to keep him moving, of course, whenever there's a rune going out. Runes are only cast on cooldown that they disappear. So it's very easy to know when he needs to be moved because the previous rune will disappear. All DPS, including the ranged and the melee, will get a 50% damage buff from standing in this rune. So when we kill Rune Master, we are going to have to death grip Mulgum around. Not Mulgum, but Brundir. We're going to have to death grip him out of the rune because you can't really move him because all he does is spell cast. So you're going to have to death grip him out of the rune whenever it spawns if we kill him second. But yeah, stand in that if you're a DPS and get a buff.
Itself, you can either attempt to kill him within 3 tank deaths, or plan your cooldowns around a 4th tank to increase the DPS time for your raid. I'll clarify that 3 tanks and 4 tanks refers to rotation of tanks due to unavoidable tank deaths that occur during Phase 3. But either can be performed fine with 2 tanks using soul stones, or ideally glyphed rebirth to get back in the encounter. Prior to killing Steelbreaker though, you'll need to kill off both Mulgum and Brundir, which offer unique challenges in the way the encounter is approached. Phase 1 of Iron Council hard mode works very similarly to the normal encounter in that the abilities of each of the targets do not change. You will still be dealing with a small AoE aura, sporadic cast from Brundir, and runes from Mulgum that the raid should take advantage of and the tank should move Mulgum out of. It's important for the raid to realize that neither Phase 1 or Phase 2 are DPS races, and they should pace their threat, mana, and cooldown usage accordingly. We found using a Fell Hunter was the most reliable way to break the rune buff Mulgum casts on himself. During this time, the Steelbreaker tank should be careful not to move too often, as Steelbreaker will occasionally...
That can be spell stolen by a mage too, right?
Yeah, it can also be purged as a shaman as well.
Purge don't work, trust me.
No?
I'm 100% kidding. I just don't want to do it.
I'm pretty sure it does, but yeah. It could be spell stolen though. And it's not a bad buff, to be honest.
Lil B's gonna fucking snag it every single time. It's not even gonna be funny.
Yeah, well, it works.
If the tank is moving. Additionally, the Fusion Punch Dispeller should be aware that there is a small chance for the Dispel to fail, so there should be a backup as often as possible.
Falco Punch, that's what it was. That was the word I was looking for.
Fusion Punch? Fusion Punch!
No, I was looking for Falco Punch. What I didn't say.
Show me your moves.
After Mulgum is dead, Steelbreaker begins using his Static Disruption ability, which is a direct damage spell and debuff he casts on a player that greatly...
Falco Punch?
No, show me your moves.
Oh.
Yes!
Yeah, as you see, there's 3 range that are outside of the group. That Shadow Priest was over here. When we actually do hard mode, we'll be setting it up just like this. They do it exactly how everybody did it. So it's no different.
Increases nature damage. This debuff will also apply to players near his target. Since Steelbreaker still maintains his raid-wide AoE during this time, and his overall damage increased when Mulgum died, it is important to take this ability seriously. Nature resistance auras during the rest of the encounter are critical. Static Disruption will always prefer targets at a range and will only target players in melee range if there are no targets at a range when he is ready to choose a target. The debuff stacks and lasts for 20 seconds, so a single player cannot take the debuff every time. There are 2 ways to handle this during phases 2 and 3. First, as you'll see in the video, you can have 2 to 3 players cycle in and out of melee range, leaving your desired target at range to be targeted by Steelbreaker. This is very controlled, but it will lower DPS or healing from any players involved in it.
With our current raid makeup, I think the play would be to put 2 Shadow Priests out there and one of the Hunters. They're doing it with a mage, but we've got 2 Shadow Priests, and it'd be better not to waste 6% of the mage's mana with blinking, because they're probably not going to run because they want to keep DPSing.
So now, are they saying that we're doing cycles for this, or are they just targeting one person, targeting another? Do they have to cycle back in and out?
It targets one person at a time, but you have 3 that sit out there, and the mage is in right now. He's got the skull above his head.
Yep.
And whoever gets chosen has to run into the 6-yard or melee range for this hunter's case.
Okay. And that buffs the boss. That buffs the.
Back out.
Who does that buff? That buffs the tank or what?
No, it's a random casting ability. It's called Static Disruption, and it debuffs whatever target that it hits with a increase in nature damage taken. So you don't want them to get more than 1 stack of it. So you alternate 3 people, and they move only as needed as they're randomly targeted out there.
So then why is he standing on the tanks?
Well, he's standing in melee because he doesn't want to get a second Static Disruption buff.
So the fact that he's next to the tank is irrelevant. It's just he's out, he's not in rain. Okay.
From what I was seeing, they're not going to. It only casts on people out of melee range, so they only do it there.
Yeah, there's 2 parts of it. It only casts on a player that's out of the furthest player. So we pick 3 people to go out there to randomly chosen. And then when that person gets hit, initially everybody within 5 yards also gets hit with that debuff. So once they're moving and they move into melee, they don't spread it. It's not a disease, which is nice. They only initially infect everybody who's within 5 yards. That's why we have them come out, so that they don't infect everybody with it by everybody stacking in melee and then him just dropping Static Disruption on everyone. So that's the reason why he had range, though.
The alternative is to leave 3 players out of range at all times. This is due to a secondary targeting mechanic. Steelbreaker will not apply Static Disruption to a target that currently has Static Disruption if there is another player without the debuff at a range. Positioning in phases 2 and 3 is critical. The strategy we found worked best was for Brendir to be tanked in positioning.
Now, if you look here, Melee, you can actually see him using that ability. That is the interrupt that you're going to want to use.
In phases 2 and 3 is critical. The strategy we found worked best was for Brendir to be tanked in such a way that melee players could attack Brendir while still in range of Steelbreaker. All other players, including the Steelbreaker tank, would be at maximum melee range from Steelbreaker. Ranged players would be at a range on the opposite side of Steelbreaker from Brendir. This works because, if positioned correctly, Brundir's overload falls just short of the range required to hit the raid on the other side of Steelbreaker. Since a melee can still stay in range of Steelbreaker, they will never be in danger of Static Disruption being cast on them and can focus on interrupting lightning whirls. At about 20% health left on Brundir, we call for most of the raid to switch targets to Steelbreaker to get debuffs active and ready for the burn phase. At this point, we decide whether or not to wait until another overload before killing Brundir, as it's important that the tanks be able to face Steelbreaker away from the raid without being hit by an overload themselves. When Brundir dies, the encounter becomes a burn phase. Steelbreaker increases his damage and now also applies a debuff to his current tank, which increases their damage output by 200%, but also causes them to melt down and die after 30 seconds. When meltdown occurs, it also deals very high AoE damage. Tank switches will need to occur immediately before the meltdown occurs, so the previous tank can run away from the raid before exploding. When any player in the raid dies, including the tanks who melt down, he will heal for 1 million health or 10% of his life, so long as a healing debuff is applied to him. He will also increase his damage by another 25% for each player death. It is important that no one other than tanks die at this time. The first tank has about a 10-second lead-in time before the debuff is applied, giving your raid about 40 seconds of pure DPS time before his first heal occurs. Since many players will be able to make use of cooldowns twice during this phase if they use.
So, this is kind of good for our raid. We do have 2 Shadow Priests, and those 2 Shadow Priests, one of the 2 of them is going to be on assignment for Mind Blast. Mind Blast has to go out before that tank dies, because that'll leave him only with a 10% heal. So that's something to keep in mind, because we don't need a Mortal Strike Warrior. We don't need Deadly Poison from rogues. It's just more damage in the long run that we don't have to sacrifice for keeping that. So we'll get the Shadow Priest in position to know that when the time is correct.
Use the first one immediately, we choose to burn Heroism immediately. Before the first tank dies, we aim for less than 50% health remaining on Steelbreaker. Glyph of Rebirth is by far the most stable way to revive a tank in this encounter. However, if you choose to use Soul Stones, the tank must watch raid.
And by the way, rebuffs have to go out on these tanks every time, right after. Not anything buffing damage, but HP, things of that nature.
Health for ticks of Steelbreaker's AoE and resurrect immediately after one so they can be healed up. If you're planning on killing Steelbreaker in 3 tank rotations, have your paladins begin using chaining Divine Sacrifice AoE shield walls immediately after the tank transition occurs to the 3rd tank. If a Retribution paladin uses this first, then taunts Steelbreaker, then salves himself, he has a high chance of gaining the 200% damage buff from Steelbreaker, but this should only be done if the encounter cannot extend longer than 30 seconds and will not go to a 4th tank. If you're using 4 tanks, the AoE shield wall should be saved for immediately before the 4th tank taunts. The 3rd tank also needs to make sure cooldowns are chained on themselves and buffs/debuffs are active on Steelbreaker in the next tank. Whether you're using 3 or 4 tanks, you can make the fight easier by using a Mage Ice Block rotation near the end of the encounter. If a Mage goes to range and everyone else stays in melee, the Mage will take a static disruption. He or she can immediately Ice Block, and as long as they stay Ice Blocked for 10 seconds, they will also take a second static disruption without taking damage. Thanks for watching this movie. As always, feel free to ask.
And they actually did that in that video. If you barely caught it, that mage was Ice Blocked in the very back. But that's only emergency purposes. I'm pretty sure that we're not going to have to use that. All right, Kolagharn's pretty straightforward. This is only a 2-minute video, or 3-minute video. There's an addendum video that I'll add to it as well, because it gives better information. But yeah, this one doesn't really need explanations. There's 2 achievements from this boss, no hands and both hands. So we'll get those as the weeks progress. We might try to do no hands this week. Just because it's very simple to DPS both of them and kill the boss at the same time. So,
welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. My name is Lore from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be discussing the Kolagharn encounter. There are 3 attackable entities in the Kolagharn encounter. Kolagharn himself will remain stationary for the entire fight, and there should always be a tank in melee range to absorb the hit. If there's no one close enough, he'll cast a raid-wide attack that generally causes a wipe, so this is important. Aside from Kolagharn, his 2 hands can be attacked separately. His right hand, which will be to the left as the raid faces him, is the most important for purposes of this strategy. Periodically, the right hand will grab onto one raid member, who must then be freed, which is done by DPSing the hand for a short period of time. Since the raid member will be taking around 3,000 damage per second while being held, and is unable to take any actions, you'll want to just keep your DPS focused on the right hand until it's destroyed. Once the right hand has been destroyed, the DPS can shift to Kolagharn himself. A few adds will spawn, which should be picked up in off-tank. They don't have very much health, so it's usually okay to just let the tank kill them. However, every so often Kolagharn will place a stacking debuff on the main tank that reduces his armor by 25%. After 2 stacks, the off-tank will need to move into position and taunt the boss temporarily so that the main tank's debuff can wear off. If necessary, you can assign a ranged AoE class to help the off-tank clear up the adds so he can move into position. After a short period of time, the right hand will respawn again and DPS should move back to it. Its health is subtracted from Kolagharn's health pool, so DPSing the hand is essentially the same as DPSing the boss. The left hand can be attacked and killed the same way the right hand can, and will periodically swipe the raid, dealing a decent amount of nature damage. This can be healed through fairly easily, so the left hand can be ignored entirely. However, if you're having trouble keeping everyone alive, you can have DPS move to it instead of Kolagharn if you prefer. Just remember that killing the right hand is your first priority. While all of this is going on, Kolagharn will occasionally fire I-beams at a random raid member. These are quite painful, so that raid member must drop whatever they're doing and run away as soon as it begins. He'll continue to chase that person with the I-beams, and it will hit anyone else who happens to be standing nearby as it passes, so everyone needs to be watching for this constantly. He'll usually only target ranged DPS and healers for this, but he can occasionally target a melee.
So I'm going to stop this just because they do it a different way. You've seen how that person ran left to right in the room. If you just run out of the room because the door stays open, it's the same thing. So a ranged DPS, most likely mage or maybe a boomkin or something like that, has a lot easier time of just running out of the room because that actually stops the ability early. Once it gets so far past the door, it actually just interrupts the ability and restarts the timer. And they can normally like blink to get back up real quick, or they can sprint to get back up real quick. So also something else that he didn't mention, it's physical damage whenever the right hand picks someone up. So bops work.
All in all, Kolagharn is a relatively quick and simple encounter that's a lot of fun. As always, more information on this and other encounters can be found on the Project Marmot forums at Tankspot.
This music is depressing.
What's that?
This music is depressing.
Oh, well, that's not the music.
Hard disagree. It's fucking great, man.
Like
Okay.
streamer
Dude, it's super chill, man. I'm just like vibing over here, man. Come on.
Baby, lock them doors.
Yeah, but I'm old. You know, I'm old.
All right, so this is an addendum to that other video. So
this video is a quick addendum to our posted Kolagharn strategy. If you're watching this on YouTube and want the whole strategy or want to see both videos, check out the guide link in the movie information box on YouTube. Nature resistance, either from a hunter or shaman, is recommended for this encounter. This can dramatically reduce the damage the raid is taking. Additionally, a mage casting dampen magic on ranged players before the encounter can help with I-beam damage.
Even though he says that, it's not worth it.
I-beams cannot initially target melee ranged players unless there are no ranged targets available. As long as players correctly kite the I-beams and do not die from them, melee will never have to deal with I-beams. For this reason, it is best to have as many players in tight on Kolagharn's body as possible. Kolagharn will occasionally cast an ability that locks spellcasting in melee range. While this is dangerous for casters, it has less of an impact on restoration druids who can still effectively use their hots. Rubble spawns specifically when an arm dies. The rubble have an aura which will destroy nearby melee and quickly kill tanks. The use of a well-timed shockwave can dramatically increase survivability, so long as ranged AoE immediately targets and kills the rubble.
So this is BIS for a DK tank to be on the boss and a warrior to be on the ads because of shockwave. And of course thunderclap. But yeah, basically ranged DPS is just going to switch really quick to kill the rubble and then go right back to the boss's main body, unless we're calling for DPS on a certain arm.
Since all three targets in this encounter have enormous hitboxes, we moved our melee players to the far side of Kolagharn's body, so they would avoid any chance of being killed by the rubble when we killed the right arm. We started this encounter short-handed on healing, so we looked for ways to reduce the strain on these players. One major adjustment we made was finishing Kolagharn off with his left arm instead of killing his right a final time. This is because the left arm had taken indirect damage from Cleave's whirlwinds and other multi-target abilities throughout the encounter, and it was already at less than half life by the time we had brought Kolagharn down to 25%. Once Kolagharn was below 20%, we focused strictly on the left arm. After this, we easily killed the main body. It's important to keep in mind that killing the right arm and left arm simultaneously does lead to Kolagharn dealing AoE damage to the raid. Timing the killing of the second arm should ideally be done when the other will respawn before it dies. At the end of this kill, our raid discovered that Kolagharn can fall the wrong way when he dies. About half of our raid attempted to cross the misplaced bridge and wound up dead or at the bottom of the pit below.
So
That's hilarious.
normally the body falls straight across, but this was a bug back in retail. When you killed both arms at once, he would fall this direction. So.
I hope they keep that. That'd be fucking hilarious.
I hope they didn't fix it. It'll be pretty funny to watch people walk over there. Yeah. All right, so this is Araya. Pretty straightforward fight.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. My name is Lore from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be guiding you through the Araya encounter. The initial pull is one of the toughest aspects of the fight to get down properly. Araya patrols with 2 Panther sentries that, when given the opportunity, will pounce a random raid member, dealing enough damage to spell a quick death. Avoiding this initial pounce is key. We'll be releasing a companion guide to this video that explains the pull in detail, but in our group we found the best method was to have our Death Knight off-tank drop a Death and Decay at the end of her patrol path, and have the entire raid bunch up around the corner as you can see here. Once she reaches the group, our main tank picks up the boss while the off-tank holds the 2 sentries. Once the off-tank has a decent threat lead, DPS can begin killing the sentries one at a time. Everyone should remain grouped up in front of the boss as much as possible, and it's a good idea to place a raid marker over your main tank, as you can see the triangle here, to give an easy visual reference of where everyone should be standing. Once the 2 sentries are dead, DPS can move to the boss. Every so often, Araya will cast an ability called Terrifying Screech that will fear everyone in the raid for up to 5 seconds. This fear can
It's you, Vert.
Be broken by any normal means such as Fear Ward, Will of the Forsaken, Berserker Rage, and so forth, but Tremor Totem is particularly powerful should you have a Shaman available. By itself, the fear isn't much more than a nuisance, however it will make several members of your raid vulnerable to pounces if your DPS is slow to kill the sentries. 2 types of ads will be summoned throughout the fight. The first and easiest to deal with is the Swarming Guardians. These have very little health, do very little damage, and can generally just be AoE'd down without too much concern. This purple beam indicates that Araya is summoning the second type of ad, the Feral Defender. She'll summon him about a minute into the fight, and all DPS should switch to him as soon as he becomes attackable.
So this is the one that we're going to avoid killing first week. We probably will never do this achievement again. So be good to just get it down and get it done. If it becomes a hassle because of whatever reason, then we'll just skip it and we'll kill her. And basically it's just a DPS swap to Feral Defender. And then back to her.
Because it buffs her based on the number of times that he's not killed, right?
Yeah. It buffs her every time it dies, she
gets weaker.
She loses damage and she loses HP.
Okay.
So if we just kill her without it, then it'll max health and max damage. That'll be super easy. Either way, I think this is a very easy achievement to get. It just takes the totem control. That's really what it comes down to, is just the totem control. And that's really about the end of the fight.
The only thing we might need to consider for that is moving the defender out of melee, because it might be that person might be getting cleaved.
Nope. Can't move it. It has to stay in melee and it has to be faced away from the group. That's it.
It does.
Yep.
Okay.
Just as long as it's faced away from the group and it's inside the boss, it'll be completely fine.
It's not going to take cleave damage from us?
It shouldn't. Everybody should be single targeting. There's only Warriors whirlwinding and DKs using Death and Decay.
Paladin, Divine Storm, Consecrate, things like that too.
Enhancement, Fire Nova Totem, Enhancement, Chain Lightning, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but
like 90% AoE.
Yeah, but you can't move it out. Like, it's got too much health anyways. I think it's got 2.9 million or something like that.
As long as that's the case, then we shouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think it's way too much for melee to do anything. I've never had an issue with melee cleaving it to death. So I think we're fine. But that's the whole fight. We don't need to watch any further. All right, so Hoodier hard mode. This is the one that we're going to go for. This is a timed event. If we get to a certain point, and which I believe it's a minute and 30 seconds, it has to be below 30%, we wipe it if it's not there.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. My name's Ciderhelm, I'm the administrator of Tankspot.com, and in this video I'll show you our Hodir hard mode strategy. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right so you'll be automatically notified as we release more movies. Hodir is the simplest of the Ulduar hard modes, and while the DPS requirements for this hard mode are relatively high, it is lower than many of the later hard modes will require. For these reasons, most guilds should consider pursuing Hodir as their first true hard mode. At the beginning of the encounter, our goal is to break the mages, shaman, and moonkin, generally in that order. We split our range to handle one group of these and our melee to handle the other. In our strategy, I pull Hodir near the melee group for a very slight boost of DPS on him while this is occurring, and to allow melee to keep DPS up on him while they move him into position. Hodir can be killed in the center of the room, but we preferred using the back right corner, as this would encourage the NPCs to congregate in that direction and require less movement of our ranged classes. The back right was also closer to where a ranged DPS finished off their own.
Alright, so I'm going to pause this real quick because this is for you, Ren. So you and Clef are going to be tanking this. Unfortunately, neither of you has a comparable DPS spec at all, so one of you is going to try to do as much damage as you can to the ads. The other one's actually going to take the boss, and if you just so happen to die, the other one will pick it up. If you notice these circles that are here, you're the primary person that gets cast by these. Now you could bait these out, and that's the reason why you'll see this guy move back, and he'll be in a position, and it'll be a max melee range basically, and then he'll see the circle and he'll run into the boss, but not enough to where it actually turns the boss, but he'll be out of the circle because he wants to bait one of four, because he casts 4 of these. It'll be 1 in range normally, 2 in melee, and 1 on the tank. You'll always be the first one that gets targeted, so you'll be the first one to move. So just want to make that apparent to you real quick, okay?
Beans.
And you'll see how he baits these out as the video progresses, by the way.
Yeah.
And when he was talking about the ads at the beginning, for those of you who play DPS, those ads that we mark in the raid, those are the only ones you're going to DPS. You're not going to kill any of the rest of them. There's no reason to kill any of the rest of them because the other ads, they target their frozen allies and they break them out and they do more damage than you. So you don't have to worry about it.
Their own group of NPCs, breaking them out of the ice blocks, allowing them to more quickly attack Hodir. Before going further, let me emphasize that the basic principles of Hodir apply. Don't get hit by flash freeze, don't get hit by ice.
So, as you've seen, he casts an ability that puts snow patches on the ground. There'll be enough snow patches for ranged and melee to run into. You have to, 100% have to, be on one of these snow patches whenever he casts Flash Freeze. If you don't, it freezes you just like an NPC. Directly after the Flash Freeze is over, DPS all have to switch, except for melee, to the closest, and if you do have some in melee, then melee will switch too, but it's mostly going to be ranged, to the closest NPCs that are marked, that will mark, which will be mages, shaman, and a boomkin. There's 2 mages, there's 1 shaman, 1 boomkin. Those are the 3 that have to be broken out and then continue on the boss. Melee will only run if it's within 3 to 5 meters from the boss, because we don't want you too far away from Hodir. So you're not going to run out in Chinatown and go DPS the guy who's way in the back. Range has got to take care of that. So this is very DPS oriented. We cannot lose any time with you running, because that's a second that we lost on the boss. So
icicles, and don't get hit by anything that is avoidable. Also, breaking NPCs out of Flash Freeze is important, but you won't need to break them all. We marked the mage NPCs and had 2 groups of ranged DPS burn them down quickly after each Flash Freeze. Once they're out, they'll quickly free all of the remaining NPCs. Beyond this, there are a few more things you must keep in mind through the encounter that were not important to know.
Okay, so I paused it right here because right here, you could see it. It's a toasty fire. It gives you an absurd amount of haste. Melee, if one spawns anywhere around this boss, you need to stand close to it. Gives you a ridiculous amount of haste.
Not on it or close to it?
Close to it. Yeah. I think it's like between 1 and 2 yards, something like that, just pretty close to it. Now there's two different very, very important buffs that spawn in this boss. It's the Toasty Fires and the Moonlight. There's a Moonlight right here on the opposite side. Melee, even you have to choose the Moonlight. Even if there's a Toasty Fire close, you have to choose the Moonlight. Moonlight increases your damage or damage overall, and the Toasty Fire only gives you haste. So you can get rather lucky and get both of them within, I mean, it's ideal that you get both of them at the same time. And sometimes they spawn right beside each other, and it's very, very advantageous if you get both of them. But if you got to choose between the two, you have to do Moonlight first. Increase your damage, but I think it's 50%, maybe 100. I can't really remember off the top of my head. Toasty Fires are really nice, though. There's an achievement for you to gain the buffs during the boss. You got to gain all 3 buffs. The Shaman buff is random. The Moon buff is pretty permanent. You're always going to get that one. But the Toasty Fire is random too. So just keep that in mind. Range is under the same rules. Moonlight first, Toasty Fire second, and the Shaman buff's random.
On your first Todir kills. First, ranged players should take advantage of Toasty Fires so long as it does not impede their DPS in any way. Second, ranged players should always be inside Starlight. Third, Storm Cloud buffs from Shaman are by far the most important buff in this encounter, and your DPS classes need to understand how to make use of this when it comes. Storm Cloud is a single target buff that allows the affected player to hit 6 players.
Okay. He didn't say it, but Moonlight doesn't always spawn in melee. So only if it spawns there, you want to get that first. Most of the time, you guys are going to have Toasty Fires more than everyone else. It's going to be harder for you to get a Moonlight buff than it is to get a Toasty Fire. But melee, you're going to get Toasty Fire most of the time.
Near them with Storm Power, which provides a massive critical strike damage bonus for 30 seconds. While active, any personal cooldown should be used, and players should be able to get temporary damage buffs such as Hysteria from other players that don't have the buff. Because only 6 players can be hit by this at a time, we created 2 unique ranged DPS groups that would, as often as possible, stay separate from each other in different starlights. If a healer was hit by Storm Cloud, they would run to the closest of these groups to buff them. Timing the encounter and knowing when to call DPS off is critical to obtaining a kill. For us, we determined that a safe spot was about 55 to 60% at the 1.5-minute marker. While learning the encounter, we would call a wipe if he was not at or below 20% at the 35-second marker. We use only...
Okay, so pretty close to what I said. So 30% at 1:30. And he said, well, what exactly did he say?
Second marker. We use only 20% at the 35-second marker.
So 20% at the 35-second marker. So pretty close to what I said. That's the rule that we went by, but yeah, same difference really. So
we use only 3 healers for this encounter. It's important that your healers understand they do not need to go past 3 minutes and should time their ability usage accordingly.
This boss fight's kind of long for their timed kill. This is going to be a challenge because this says 3 minutes, but it's 2 minutes.
Yeah, we have to do it in 2 minutes, don't we?
Yeah, we got to do it in 2 minutes. So theirs is a little bit different than ours. We're going to use the same makeup as theirs, like the healers that randomly get the buff. They're going to swap groups, buff the group with 6 people, whatever, for the range groups. Same difference, really. It's just a DPS check. We're going to try as hard as we can to get it, though. Something I didn't bring up in our meeting earlier today. Simon.
Yeah.
And Braddock. I vote that we sell the shield every time it drops. We don't need it for our tanks. So
which one is it?
The Northern Barrier. It's the BOE. I vote that we sell it every time. It's 25k. So
I think I'd rather have the one from 10 Man Hard. So fuck it, I don't care.
yeah. It's not as good as even the wall from KT. So
Where will that money go? Whenever we sell BOEs, I usually.
I think it should go towards Ruined Orbs.
Okay, yeah. I make flasks and speed pots free in our guild just with BOE sales.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. All our guys normally pay for all their own stuff, but they know that when they need enchants, they have the guild bank is open. Doesn't matter if you need berserking or whatever. But yeah. So that if we sell the shield each time, I know the first one on retail server was like 28k or something like that. Really depends on what the market is. But I think we should take that money and put it towards Ruined Orbs if they're for sale and if they're at a reasonable price.
I think that's a good idea, especially if we don't need it. We can sell it for gold that we can use to get people.
Yeah, Clef and Owie both have Wall of Terror, and Ren doesn't need it, so
right.
I don't think it's useful for any of us.
I just want money. So.
Well, I would say it needs to be put towards the orbs, though. Like, if anything, I don't think anything else is really needed for viables. Maybe revert a little bit towards the Mechanohog for the Titan Steel, etc., to give somebody a free mount, and that's really where the money should go.
Sounds good to me.
Real quick, Austin, you want me to get on real quick? Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so next thing is Thorum. This will be the one that we'll attempt. We might not kill it the first week, and I'm pretty sure that we won't in 2 attempts. But I want to familiarize everybody with it. I want to get everybody in the mood of doing it because I do want to attempt it every week. That would be ideal, I think, for everybody. Because I know we can kill Flame Leviathan. Odir is going to be the only challenging since it's pre-nerf and it's a 2-minute timer. We probably won't kill it, but I want to get people in the habit of trying. This will be the easiest hard mode by far over Flame Leviathan. This one's actually easier than Flame Leviathan, given people know the mechanics and movement. Flame Leviathan's kind of just free because if you know how to control your vehicle, you're fine. And I talked to Sax, by the way, Braddock and Simon. She said okay.
Cool.
All right, here we go.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. I'm Lord from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be showing you Thorum's hard mode, Lose Your Illusion. Phase 1, after the initial arena clear, operates almost identically to Phase 1 in a normal mode kill, with only a couple extra things to keep track of. First, you need to be able to clear the hallway in under 2 minutes in order to pull Thorum before Sif leaves and actually act.
Isn't it 3 minutes? Legion, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So I messed up. I totally forgot on this boss. I needed to switch my screens for you guys. Here we go. Great. So for this boss, there's 2 different groups. There's a hallway group, and then there's a group that's in the arena. And I want to explain the hallway groups, what their assignment is whenever the time comes, before we actually do it, so people kind of understand. So there's a doorway on the right and the left-hand side of the room. That's a terrible circle. Bear with me. Ads only come from this side. Nothing else comes from here. Only ads come out of this arena door. This one, both ads come out of it, and there is a hallway that goes down here, and it cuts a right, and it goes up, and you got the first room. There's ads in that room. Then there is another hallway Other ads in this room. And another hallway. There's a room here. There's no ads.
There's one big guy in there.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's one huge guy in there, but nobody does anything with him. Nobody cares about him.
We don't kill him?
No, you just aggro him and fucking. Well, it's this guy. The big guy in this room is the one you gotta kill, if I remember correctly.
I thought we had to kill both, but I mean, maybe.
I may have forgotten. So you may be correct. So maybe we do have to kill a big guy in both of these rooms. And then there's a hallway here. There's ads that spawn. There's a room here. This room has traps inside of it. Cannot stand in the middle of the room. You got to run to the outside edges. And then you run down the hallway. We skip the ads in this room. This is the skip room. We do not kill the ads in this room. We just pull them, run all the way down. We target the boss. We hit the boss. The ad, Sarah, is here. She comes down and helps in the fight, but that engages the hard mode. We've only got 2 minutes to get there. Basically, we'll try it a few times, get people familiarized. If we fail, that's okay. We're just kind of trying to get people in a swing because it's probably the one that we'll push towards first. Out of the hard modes that take some work. Flame Leviathan, I really don't count that as take some work. It's just, can you drive a car? Who's got their license?
I do.
You know, that type of deal. But anyways, that is that fight.
I actually have a question about Leviathan, out of curiosity. Is there certain classes that need to go in certain vehicles?
Nope. It's eye level.
That's
eye level.
Yeah, your vehicle HP and damage is based on your eye level.
So do you guys have an idea what that's going, like who's going to do what?
For the most
Anybody above 4,300 is probably going to drive.
4,300 gear score.
Yeah. There is one part of it where we'll be sending range damage dealers up onto the Flame Leviathan, so they'll actually get to press their actual buttons for that fight. Since you are not a range damage dealer.
Except for Vert. Just because he's a shaman, he may go up too. Just because he can throw a heal.
Special Vert.
No, hey, dude, Ulduar's just shaman fucking hat.
Yeah,
I have a lot to do.
Shamans.
Yep. But yeah, I wanted to show you this before he starts explaining it because he doesn't explain this. So that'll at least give you some idea, at least. You're not lost if you are the hallway group. All right, here we go.
Activate the hard mode. For this reason, you may want to be a little more careful with how you separate your raid into the hallway and arena groups. Remember that hunters and melee DPS will do best in the arena where they are unaffected by the cast speed debuff, while casters will do best in the hallway. The other thing to consider...
He doesn't explain this, but I want you to see this. If you notice Thorum's hammer here, flying through the air, it hits a random person that's inside this room. Only melee can be stacked up. Ranged cannot stack up in this phase of the fight because when it hits you, it stuns you briefly. It silences you and anybody that's around you. So that's something to keep in mind that they don't explain.
The other thing to consider is the use of mind control. The Darkrune Warbringers have an ability called Aura of Celerity that will increase the attack and casting speed of your entire raid by 20%. This can stack up to 3 times and has a significant impact on your raid DPS, especially in Phase 2.
And we have 2 Shadow Priests, so this is going to be awesome for us to get this buff off.
However, it can be a little tricky to coordinate. Ideally, you want to use a Shadow Priest wearing a full Frost Resist set and at least 6% spell hit to avoid resists. The Mind Controlling Priest should be stationed in the arena initially and should stand just outside the group toward the middle of the room. As I said before, you can use up to 3 Mind Controls. More Mind Controls will stack up more of a haste buff, but add a lot of complexity to the fight. We found the fight was easiest for us to handle with just 1 Mind Control, but it's a good idea to experiment a little to find a good balance for your group.
chances are we will only have one of the Shadow Priests doing it, so that means that we have misery on our targets at the same time that we have a mind controllable priest that's giving us all the buff. That'd be really good. That's why it's very lucky that we have 2 Shadow Priests instead of 1.
Timing is important on the Phase 2 transition. If possible, you want the hallway tank to be in position to pick up Thorum once he jumps into the arena, as there will most likely still be some mobs being tanked in the arena. DPS should clear these out quickly and start focusing on Thorum as soon as possible. At this time, the mind-controlling priest should release his Warbringer, move underneath Thorum's balcony, and pick it back up again.
Okay, so I gotta pause everybody here to go look at general chat real quick.
What?
Go look at guild general chat in Discord.
Oh man.
Darth, I'm so hoping you were looking forward to that, man. I fucking love Darth. Like, Darth barely ever talks, but Darth is so fucking awesome.
It's too good. I had to pause it there. Oh, he's talking. I'm fucking riveted.
I fucking love
here.
this dude. Yeah, Darth, I'm super looking forward to all the shit you're gonna be able to pull off in here.
All right, here we go.
This positioning, the mind control priest won't have to worry about dodging lightning charges. The raid's positioning is very important as well. Just like in normal mode, Thorum's chain lightning can be devastating if too many people are bunched up. We found it easiest to assign each healer a position around the room, assign melee DPS into 2 groups standing at each of Thorum's feet, and have ranged DPS find gaps to stand in. In addition to all of Thorum's normal abilities, Sif will be doing a heavy amount of damage to the raid through a few frost-based abilities of her own. The most immediately apparent is her Blizzard, which is Thorum's feet, and have ranged
Alright, I'm gonna explain this a little bit. So they've already engaged the hard mode. They went through the hallway phase. Now, if you notice this generator, there's generators around the entire room, and in these corners too, where you can't see. But if you notice, this electricity is coming through, and it's actually hitting this Resto Druid. It does damage, but it doesn't do that much damage that he can't take 2, 3, 4 hits and not die, especially with other healers healing him too. So he doesn't move very fast. You'll notice this tree kind of moves slow. Now, I don't know why he's waiting so long, but this is the signifier here. This lightning charge that's coming from the generator to the boss means that he's going to shoot an arc ability that comes from the generator to the right, which is this one here, to the generator to the left, which is this one here. He'll hit an arc that'll hit all 3 generators and the wall in between. That is the deadly part of this boss. If you get hit by the arc that he shoots out that hits the wall, and you'll see it here in a moment, you die. This part right here won't kill you as much, but it's more added damage that we don't need. So moving quicker would be a little bit better than this druid right here. So keep that in mind. You'll see it a few times. It'll hit the walls, and it does a 3 generator arc. So if you're within 1 generator on each side, you will be hit. So melee have to be very advantageous to move around the boss as quickly as possible as soon as they see which direction it's charging from.
DPS find gaps to stand in. In addition to all of Thorum's normal abilities, Sif will be doing a heavy amount of damage to the raid through a few frost-based abilities of her own. The most immediately apparent is her Blizzard, which is always active and rotates slowly around the room in a clockwise motion. Ranged will need to dodge this as much as possible, although avoiding lightning charge is still top priority. The second most important of Sif's abilities is an AoE Frost Nova that will root raid members in place. This should be dispelled immediately, as it can easily cause someone to get caught in a blizzard or lightning charge. Sif also has an AoE Frostbolt Volley and a single target Frostbolt that she'll use fairly frequently. For this reason, we found it helpful to have the entire raid wear 1 piece of Frost Resist gear. The Mind Control Priest will also be caught in Blizzard whenever it comes near the balcony, but with Shadow Form and a full Frost Resist set, it should be easily healable. As Phase 2 continues, Thorum's damage will continue to ramp up, especially on the tanks, and eventually outpace the healers. High DPS is extremely important here, as you need to end the fight before his tank damage becomes unhealable. After Thorum's self-buff reaches about 6 stacks, tanks should use armor potions and start rotating cooldowns and trinkets. External cooldowns such as Pain Suppression or Divine Sacrifice should be used late in the fight to help fill in the gaps and reduce raid damage.
I do want to pause here real quick to say something else. I don't know how you guys do it, Braddock and Simone, but for our Immortal run and for our Ulduar run, I would appreciate if everybody brought proper pots that they needed, their pre-pots and their regular pots. You get paid well enough to buy 1 stack at least, just from the gold alone from the bosses in the trash, for pre-pots in Immortal. Now, in Ulduar, of course, we're going to take some repair bills. In Nax, we're definitely not. So, I guess warning or saying something to everybody to bring all your haste pots and wild magic pots that you need for whatever class, if you need them, would be great. So just gonna say that.
Hey, question.
Hey, go ahead.
Would free action potions have any use?
They do, but at a sacrifice of DPS. We're not doing Thorum hard mode, but twice this week, so don't bring any. Free action potions are good for Thorum, but they're kind of a waste of damage. So,
I mean, like, what about for REI?
Nope, doesn't help at all. It's a fear.
Okay.
So I wouldn't bring any. I would bring just your regular pre-pots just to do damage.
Unbalancing Strike poses one of the biggest threats to tank survivability, especially in hard mode, as it deals a massive amount of damage. However, improved Demoralizing Shout has a huge impact in reducing this damage. Keeping it up constantly is practically a requirement to successfully finishing the encounter.
All right, so we are done with this boss. It's basically rinse and repeat the same mechanics over and over. Of course, you need to watch out for the rotating blizzard that goes around the room in a clockwise motion the entire fight, and you have to move according to that. There is no cleave that you have to worry about for the boss. There's no worries running through the boss, anything like that. And you have to watch out for which direction the charge is coming from. That's the 2 main mechanics that you have to watch out for. So we'll just end this one here. And we'll go to Freya. Freya is pretty challenging. There's a lot of different opinions on where you should use Bloodlust on this fight. I know that my normal raid used it on the 3 ads that spawn. There's a lot of mechanics in this fight. There's a lot of mechanics to watch out in this fight, so you have to pay attention, and you may need to rewatch this one. If you do need me to send it to you again for later, feel free to send me a message in Discord, and I will. This is one that you probably won't get on the first try, just watching it. So
I love the Freya room. It's so pretty.
I do. I like it as well.
It's my favorite spot in Ulduar.
It's Ulduar is actually my favorite raid, so
it's a lot of people's favorite raid. It is awesome.
Hello and welcome to the TankSpot Ulduar Raid Guide. My name is Eliana, and in this video, I'll go over the strategy that we use for the
Eliana.
Yeah, so just a little back log in case you don't know. Eliana's a bitch.
She is?
She's a bitch.
Oh my god.
She's a bitch. I know her. I know all of them. We used to, like, all the top guilds that were back then, all the top guilds, we communicated between each other. I've been in their Discord and hung out with them stuff. Eliana's a bitch. Like, she'll talk nice on the videos and stuff, but she's a cunt. Like, she's a real cunt. Like, she annoyed me to no end. Like, I don't hate her voice, but I just hate her. Like, I hate hearing her because I know that it's just some stupid shit, like drama. Like, because she was all about that. She was bringing up drama shit constantly. Like, I hated her.
25-man version of Knock 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 on Wood, Freya's hard mode that you access by leaving all 3 elders alive. If you would like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to TankSpot. Also be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right. You will be automatically notified as we release movies that way.
I hate her
For the
voice.
Sartharian 3-Drake fight, any elder you leave up in the Freya encounter will not join the fight directly, but each of them gives Freya substantial buffs and new abilities. Elder Iron Branch will give Freya the ability Iron Roots. This is cast on 3 random raid members at a time and will root them in place, as well as deal around 9,000 damage every 2 seconds to the target. Currently, Iron Roots can be dispelled by most snare-breaking abilities, such as the Paladin's Hand of Freedom and Druid Shapeshift. They are also attackable and can be killed by regular DPS, should your raid not be able to dispel them. Either way, they need to be disposed of very quickly. Additionally, leaving him up increases.
So in case you guys didn't notice, this was a wipe. Like, even though that they use this footage in the video, this is a wipe. 6 people are dead. Just a heads up. And you'll see it change later.
Physical damage dealt by adds by 50%. Leaving Elder Stonebark up enables Freya to cast Ground Tremor, which is a 2-second cast spell that deals around 13k damage to every raid member, and interrupts and causes a lockout of 6 seconds for any spell school being cast at the time. Also, leaving him up increases Freya's physical damage dealt by 75%. Elder Brightleaf lends Freya the ability Solar Flare, which results in 3 sunbeams popping up simultaneously that inflict 14,000 damage every 2 seconds to anyone standing near one. Additionally, magic damage dealt by Freya and her adds is increased by 60%. With all 3 elders up, Freya and all her adds also gain 72% more health. Obviously, that makes the DPS requirement a little more steep, because you will need more time for each add phase. Let me go over some general hints before I explain the different add phases. To make this fight work for you, you have to add efficiency and synergy to your raid group. Before the fight starts, assign people to little groups that spread around Freya in a circle. Each camp should have a healer and about 2 ranged DPS. That way, you should never have more than 3 people that need to move from a solar flare, and you also ideally won't have everyone running to the same mushroom in a conservator phase. Speaking of the ancient conservator phase, that's the huge tree you're seeing in the background. For this phase, spread out under the mushrooms as best as you can. Look for a new one when the shroom you're under gets big before it disappears. You want to minimize movement from mushroom to mushroom. Sometimes spawns are terrible and you can't do much about that, but you want to try and not clump up to avoid people taking massive damage from nature's fury. The person that gets targeted by it needs to move to a safe spot as soon as possible. Under ideal circumstances, that safe spot is a mushroom with no one else under it.
So, pretty poor explanation skills, but Nature's Fury is a debuff that one player will get. and they have to run away from everyone else when they have that debuff, including if it silences them and they have to run to a different mushroom. Other healers to be able to heal them. It does damage to them, and it does damage to anybody who's within 5 yards of them. So that's the reason why they have to move to a different mushroom.
But if people are clumped, just move away from them while staying in range of at least one healer. Communication is key here. If a tank gets targeted, obviously people near him or her have to move. The safe zone below a mushroom is fairly big, so take advantage of that and don't stand right on top of someone else unless you can't help it at all. In the Lesher phase, the raid needs to clump up on Freya. Use targeted AoE and bring all Leshers down to 20% health or less. Then have a tank AoE taunt all Leshers from a range while your raid runs into the opposite direction. At this point, they need to be burned down quickly, and it's advised to have hunters lay down some frost traps or to use improved blizzard to snare the remaining Leshers before they run off again and explode on someone. It may be a little difficult at first to figure out, but once you get some practice, it's a fairly safe way to deal with Leshers.
So, one good thing about detonating Lashers is that a boomkin is really key on this fight. The knockback from their tidal wave is awesome to knock them away. Tanks, unfortunately, you guys are going to have an aggravating job because there's going to have to be an AoE taunt that happens, which will inevitably AoE taunt the boss too. And you'll have to taunt that boss back and move it away from the direction that the tank will be moving. That's tanking the Lashers. Ranged, you'll still have to stick on the Lashers and DPS them until they die while they're chasing that tank that has AoE'd them.
The Lashers just target the person who's farthest from them, don't they?
They do, but it's a random target, so grouping up is better, so you can AoE them down together.
Yeah.
And then when you AoE taunt, you'll get 2 seconds of them actually being taunted, and then once that tank is out of range, they'll all go towards him, and you'll have the knockback from the boomkin to help with that.
So we're relying on the challenging shout to get all the ads then?
Basically, yes.
And challenging shout is a 2-3 minute cooldown?
Something like that. There's 2 waves of it, so we only have 1 warrior, so unfortunately the boomkin is going to be a big key to helping that, especially because tidal wave's got such a short cooldown in comparison to challenging shout.
Alternatively, if you'll hear me out real quick.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
How would this sound if we had either Snizzard or Hisoka effectively, once they're all down to 20%, 10% or whatever, they disengage out, drop a frost nova or a frost trap, a slowing trap, and then they just book it farther away. They're all going to turn to the hunter. Yeah, everybody just turns around and just blow them up once they're out of range.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's solid game plan as well.
Okay.
It's just that I'm just saying in general that the knockback helps with boomkins a lot.
Okay.
On that part anyways.
Be ready to deal with solar flares that may pop up while everyone is clumped. Your raid has to pay close attention and be ready to move and readjust if one or even multiple flares pop up on them. This is the greatest danger of the Lesher phase. I find it easiest to pen up my camera and look straight down onto my character to spot flares, but that comes down to personal preference. For the element.
So in this phase, the Lasher, as you see the DK is Chains of Icing it, is like a really key component. So in a way, you'll be an ad tank here, Ren, because we'll need your Chains of Ice for this. The Lasher, this physical Lasher, does a shitload of damage. Like, he hits like a fucking maniac. And you Chains of Icing him while, you're tanking him and running away and not actually getting hit is super key.
Hey, how come the hunter's keeping his pet by his side?
Which hunter?
Well, he's the one in the foreground there. Just
you
to
talking
the
about
right
this
of that.
one?
Yeah.
It's because he called it back from the boss to attack the tree. Because the tree doesn't say it on here, but the tree, whenever it actually grows up to its full potential, it actually heals all the ads. Well, it heals everything in this room for 30% of its life. That includes the boss. So all the ads, all the ads would be healed for 30%. So you're looking at.
No, I understand that, but if you watch, he's got his pet just standing right next to him. He doesn't send him in on Freya.
Well, just because they're decently made videos doesn't discount the fact that some people are retarded.
You can definitely use your pet and attack as you see fit.
Sure.
There's go ahead.
I am retarded. So
no, you're old. You're not retarded. You've been around the block a couple times, Snizzard. You know what the deal is.
Are you retired?
You're retired.
I haven't worked
there
since
you go.
2003.
There you go.
When I'm only 67.
That's not too bad, though.
Mental ads, we assign a Death Knight to Chains of Ice kite the Snaplasher over and over and have him ready to taunt it if someone else draws aggro. Our off tank picks up the other two. Burn them down evenly. Here too, communication is key. If you fail to kill them within 10 seconds of each other, they will
So she doesn't say it in here because I guess it wasn't pertinent information because this is a hard mode video versus a normal mode video. The water elemental that spawns,
ancient water spirit. Yep.
Yeah, even if there's a tank tanking it, it chooses a random person to charge to. So don't think that just because it charged you, you did something wrong. It charges in a random direction. That includes the tank that's tanking the ads. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't lose aggro. It targets a random raid member to charge towards them, and it's up to everyone actually opening their eyeballs and seeing that it's going to charge that direction for them to move out of the way so they don't get knocked up. So yeah, just wanted to make that apparent.
Resurrect, and you're most likely facing a wipe. The little trees that pop up occasionally are called Irina's gift and should always have highest kill priority. If they manage to bloom, they heal Freya and any ads that are currently up for a significant chunk of health.
30% because she didn't know.
Bloodlust or heroism for the second conservator phase. This is most likely where you will have to do some catch up. There are also some general tips I can give for phase 1 from a healing perspective. For one, if you're using Grid, you should also have Grid status rate debuff installed. This lets you know very easily who's afflicted by Nature's Fury and Iron Roots, and hence will need more heals or even an emergency save if Ground Tremor is coming up at the same time. Speaking of Ground Tremor, always watch its cooldown timer closely and make good use of instant spells during its cast. Disc Priests are very useful raid healers in this encounter to counteract the damage spikes. Once you finish all 6 ad phases, phase 2 starts and you can now finally start killing Freya. We split our raid into...
And by the way, Simone and Braddock, my idea is that we should probably just clear Freya's room every week, at least at the beginning for sure, for trash epics.
Except for the 3 big elders, right?
And we're gonna kill them too. We're not doing hard mode first week. No way.
Then yeah, I mean,
not first week, but
I'm always down for epics.
We'll get to it. Yeah, we'll definitely get to it. But this room specifically has the most trash out of the entire instance, so this is the place where we're gonna get the BOEs.
It really does, doesn't it?
Lots of good herbs in there too.
Oh yeah, there's definitely.
To melee and range team. Melee stay north, range go south. Once Freya throws out her bombs, both teams simultaneously move to the left or the right, whichever side they aren't currently on. This minimizes movement and chaos. However, Freya will still cast Solar Flare, Ground Tremor, and Iron Roots. Do make sure not to forget to break Iron Root targets out. This is especially important coupled with bombs. The fight is very straightforward at this point, however, and if you haven't had many deaths, it should be clean kill from here on out. Thanks for watching this.
Those bombs that spawn underneath them that look like podlings from Dire Maul, they explode in a 7-yard radius, so you have to move a decent amount away from them.
Movie. As always, feel free to ask questions or add suggestions.
There you go. There's a little better of a picture for you. That's what they look like. They look just like the Dire Maul saplings that you open up for root tubers. Looks like that's it for that fight, though. That's just rinse and repeat at that phase. Now, Memron, this is going to be the hardest hard mode, I think. Yeah. Besides Yogg, I think this is the hardest one. This takes a lot of mechanical ingenuity. Everybody has to know what's going on for this to actually die. But yeah, the fire is a big part of it. Between the phase swapping and the controlling where the fire is in the room is like the biggest part of this boss.
Welcome to the Tank Spot Ulduar Raid Guide. This is T-Tox, and this video will go over strategy for Firefighter, Memron's hard mode. If you would like more information, or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tank Spot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right, so you'll be automatically notified as we release movies. Hard mode is accessed by pressing the red self-destruct button in the back of the room, which will automatically start the encounter. Before we push the button, we group up near the button so we can keep the first fires out of the way. Fires will spawn on a particular member in the raid, but will follow whoever is closest to them. When the first fires spawn, we spread out to begin Phase 1. We drag Mimiron to the outer edge of the room to minimize the effect of Shock Blast. We then drag him clockwise around the room, moving him away from mines and whenever Shock Blast occurs. As a result of pushing the button and activating the room's self-destruct sequence, Mimiron and his adds gain an emergency mode buff that increases his health and damage by 30%. Everyone must be aware of fires following them and remain spread out, as multiple people getting Napalm Blast could lead to an early death. This includes melee when they spread out for Shock Blast. To prevent Napalm Blast from spreading to the tank, only healers should stand in the path where Mimiron will be dragged, and they must maintain a safe distance from the tank. About halfway through the phase, he will spray a flame suppressant, extinguishing all of the flames in the room and increasing the cast time of spells by 50% for 8 seconds. He will only do this once in Phase 1. After that, it's rinse and repeat. Continue to watch for fires that spawn and spread, and watch out for mines, Shock Blast, and remain spread out for Napalm Blast. During the transition between phases, the raid must group up to control the fires. This is done by having the entire raid group up on one side of the room. If you picture the room as having 3 parts to the room, separated by the spawn points of the Phase 3 adds, we have the raid group up next to the fire on the third of the room with the most fire at the end of each phase. We try to fill in as much of this third of the room as possible with fires before the next phase. We try to work from one side to the other, but we may wind up standing between 2 areas of fire and filling in as much of that third of the room as possible. Running through a little fire is okay, as it deals about 5,000 damage per second, but be aware of fires stacked on top of each other. When there's about 10 seconds left on the Phase 2 timer, we spread out and set up for Phase 2, spreading out on the remaining 2/3 of the room. Controlling the fires between each phase is extremely important, as it gives your raid more room to maneuver at the start of each phase. In this phase, Mimiron will regularly extinguish fires in melee range, slowing their attack speed, and every minute or so will summon a frost bomb in a random area that's covered in fire. After a few seconds, this frost bomb will explode for 50,000 damage to anyone within.
So, the biggest part for hard mode, ranged and for normal, is you guys are looking out for Shock Blast in the first phase. And you got to watch out, of course, with the water bubble that's there. And when it explodes, it does 50k in every direction. So you guys all have to run away. So that's really your only really death tokens as melee, is those 2 abilities. If you get hit by Shock Blast, you're probably going to be one shot. And if you get hit by that, you're definitely going to be one shot. So
30 yards, and extinguish all fires in that area. Everyone must be made aware of its position should the melee need to run out, or the range groups need to adjust. When the fires are...
Since we are doing this on normal the first week, Melee will advise that you stay at max melee range whenever Arcane Barrage, or not Arcane Barrage, why did I say that? Machine Gun Barrage, Bullet Barrage, some bullshit. He'll say it in a minute, I'm pretty sure, but whenever that happens and it chooses a random target to face, you always need to be behind the boss, but I'm pretty sure that's rule of thumb for you since you're probably not at 3,000 expertise.
Laser Barrage.
There you go, Laser Barrage.
P3WX2 Laser Barrage.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the name of it. So you want to be kind of max melee range. It does kind of have a large hitbox, not massive like what's his name in Nax, but yeah, it's got a decent sized hitbox. So just be aware of that. So whenever it targets a random person, make sure you're always behind it range. Same thing, even if you need to cut corners like here. If it's facing a person in this direction, you need to cut a corner and run straight through here. Please do so. Do not run in a circle if all possible. If you run in a circle, that's a larger range that you have to run, losing DPS for 1, and 2 chance of it catching up to you. It does do a 360-degree turn when it does Laser Barrage, so it covers the entire room, so you constantly have to move around it. So just be aware of that. That's basically in phase 2. That's the only thing that can kill you. Same thing in hard mode. That's the only thing that can kill you is the Laser Barrage.
Extinguished, the range groups can spread out and make use of the extra area if they need to, especially after a Laser Barrage. The 3 range groups are assigned a Holy Priest, all 3 of which must be appropriately spec'd and glyphed for Holy Nova. These 3 priests are marked, and they are responsible for positioning and healing their group this phase. The groups must communicate with each other when to adjust their position to minimize gun damage.
Thankfully, we have a dedicated Holy Priest. We will not need all 3 priests to have that glyph.
Yeah, I was curious.
Because
we were going to swap.
Yeah, we only have 2. So the 1 priest will be glyphed for it. The other one will be just doing normal disc stuff.
Okay.
Holy Nova is key here for keeping the range groups alive on the run. Melee are usually healed by the remaining healers from range. If there are fires in melee range when he starts casting Laser Barrage, the melee have to be aware that things can get a little tight, as he doesn't extinguish fires while casting. Depending on the timing of the frost bombs to when you finish the phase, you might find yourself fire capped. You'll see the explosions, but fires won't appear from those explosions, nor will the current fires grow. If not, continue to control the fires for the next phase as shown here.
Fires are not normal fires, these are creeping fires. They move to follow people that are close to them. That's the reason why you see them all here, and they're kind of moving around together and trying to keep all the fire in one side of the room or one section of the room. If you think about it and you split the room up into 3 sections, that's what they're doing.
In Phase 3, blue beams will appear where emergency firebots will spawn. These have a deafening siren ability that silences everyone within 15 yards, and they have a water spray that hits anyone in its range for 20,000 damage, knocks them back 200 yards, and puts out any fire in its path. Any of these that are in danger of being near the raid must be killed immediately. One-plate DPS, such as a Death Knight, is responsible for taunting the bomb bots away from the raid and blowing them up. Even without a cooldown, they should not one-shot a plate DPS, as they hit for about 20k fire damage. Junk bots are picked up by the assault bot tank whenever possible. During this, all DPS is focused on killing the first 2 assault bots that spawn and assigning someone to loot both cores.
Magnet cores are used, and one person is going to be designated to loot them, so nobody else needs to loot the trash that drops on the ground during this fight, because one person will be designated to pick them up. Once they have picked up all the magnetic cores, they will be able to drop it on the ground, and that will draw the boss to the floor. That'll make it to where the melee are able to DPS a lot better. Unfortunately, in this phase, melee is somewhat gimped. You will only be able to jump and do DPS for a very brief second. You're not really going to do shit unless you're a DK and you're getting runic power off the ads and, throwing death coils. So.
As the second assault bot is about to go down, the ranged tank must move the aerial command unit to a safe spot if necessary. When we have 2 cores, we bring him down, bloodlust, and burn cooldowns. When he comes up, he'll spawn a bomb bot that must be dragged away from the raid. If necessary, we quickly move the aerial command unit to another safe spot, and he's brought back down again. At this point, the aerial command unit should be below 15% health, and now the ranged stay on the head to finish it off, while the melee clean up the remaining bots. When the aerial command unit is about to die, the main tank is to taunt the head so he gets aggro at the beginning of Phase 4. If we have a hunter tank the ad in Phase 3, they can then feign death, or, if we use a warlock, they can soul shatter to drop their threat after the taunt. During the transition to Phase 4, clean out the remaining bots while controlling the fire. Plan out in advance where you're going to put them initially. In this phase, the only extra ability he retains is Frost Bombs, and you must pay attention to those at all times. The range groups set back up again and act much like they did in Phase 2. You're to keep DPSing and healing while moving the groups to minimize hand pulse damage and avoiding fires, rockets, shock blasts, frost bombs, proximity mines, and laser barrage. This is another burn phase and you'll likely run into the enrage timer on your first kill. When it enrages, the room self-destructs, dealing 12,000 damage every second, only giving a few more seconds on the boss while survival cooldowns are still up. Overall, Mimiron's hard mode will test your player's ability to perform their best while constantly moving. There is a high DPS requirement that's very well tuned, but more importantly, there's a lot to be aware of. Situational and encounter awareness from all of your raiders are key to this encounter. Thanks for watching this movie. As always, feel free to ask questions or add suggestions either on YouTube or in the strategy thread on tankspot.com. Also, TankSpot donors can download all of these movies in high definition directly from our servers. Click the second link in the movie information box to learn more.
Why does he keep calling them movies? These aren't movies.
I don't know.
They're basically movies.
Wow, what a movie. What a great movie.
I see an Academy Award in this one.
We'll probably move on, yeah. Especially since we're not going to be doing Firefighter for a while.
They should have an easy mode where we just run around and not take any damage and the boss gets bored and dies and we win.
They had that in Kata.
That's in POTGC.
Ren, it's in Kata. Be real. Everything's in kata. Alright, let's get going.
This is General Vazik. This is a technical fight for ranged and healers. There's only...
oh no, I hate this one.
Yeah, there's only a couple of healers that do well in this fight at a range distance versus being in melee. That would be Holy Paladin and Priest. Only Disc. And unfortunately, none of the other healers are lucky enough. Here we go.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. Call me Splug. In this video,
Call me
I'm going
Splug.
over a raid strategy for the General Vezak's
To
hard
that mic bubbling.
If you'd like more information or would like to
If you want to know how emo I am, just keep listening. I'll tell you in every single word. Just strap yourself in. I'm Splug.
This is 2008 fucking depression, Mike.
Yeah.
To learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to TankSpot.
They have to have a
Also,
script.
be sure to subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button to the right so you'll automatically be notified as we release movies. This video is accurate as of patch 3.2.0a. Future patches may alter the fight in ways which cause the video to become obsolete.
What patch are we on? Yeah, I was just gonna say, Ren, what patch are we on?
This encounter
Patch 3, technically P3. Unfortunately, it's not,
Ren.
like
3.4.5.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Something like that.
Or pretty much Ruby Sanctum patch, technically,
Okay.
with class balances and shit.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately. Hunter's got dicked on this really bad.
is relatively static, we'll be zooming out to a ranged perspective for this video. A large portion of the fight's learning curve comes from the difficulties associated with surviving abilities that are not used against targets at point-blank ranged. The primary defining element of the General Vezak's encounter is the disabling of most forms of mana regeneration. Normally, mana can be regenerated by breaking the serenite vapors that float around the room and standing in the resulting green pool. However, this hard mode is enabled by leaving all 6 serenite clouds alive and allowing them to coalesce into a separate entity, the serenite animus. To complete hard mode, the raid must wait for all 6 clouds to spawn, one every 30 seconds, kill the serenite animus, and then kill General Vezak's. This also ensures that the fight cannot be blitzed in less than 3 minutes. The first leg of the encounter, the 3-minute stall, contains all the mechanics of non-hard mode with no change other than the finite mana limitation. Any ranged class is absolutely reliant upon casting from within the mana cost reducing residue of Shadow Crash. If they are left without a crash at any time for any reason, they should cease all mana consuming attacks and wand. But at the same time, the fight cannot be prolonged forever due to healer mana constraints. Most classes may wish to research alternate talent specializations which sacrifice throughput in favor of mana efficiency and mana sustenance. Additionally, Discipline of Priests can take some advantage of Shadow Crashes, as they do not reduce the effectiveness of Power Word Shield. All other healers should be located within melee range of Vezak's, allowing them to remain stationary throughout the encounter. To ensure all casters have consistent uptime on Shadow Crash, we've broken our raid into 2 groups. One group always stays on the left edge of Shadow Crashes, the other always stays on the right. One member of each group is given a raid icon, and all other players of that group should try to stand exactly on top of the marked player. When a group is targeted for Shadow Crash, they strafe away from the other group at
Probably
least the
Moon.
radius of a Shadow Crash, then double back into the very closest.
I think in this video you see about like 4 or 5 people knocked back from the Shadow Crash. They actually got hit, so...
corner of the fresh crash after it lands. This allows the other group to remain stationary and continue casting, as well as minimizing this group's raid movement. In the event that several Shadow Crashes target the same group, the opposite group's Shadow Crash may expire without being refreshed. If this happens, they slide toward the group that still has a Shadow Crash until they reach the closest corner of the nearest crash. Once the Animus spawns, the dynamic and pace of the fight change drastically. General Vezak's gains a shield reducing all damage taken by 99%, meaning all damage needs to transition to the Animus as soon as threat and positioning permit. In addition to adding a second tank to the encounter, the Animus will apply a Shadow Buffet which deals damage to the raid every 2 seconds in incrementally larger doses. This damage needs to be healed through normally, which will drastically tax healer mana resources. You'll want to blow Bloodlust on the second half of the Animus's health to assist with the healing throughput, as well as burning any damage cooldowns. If damaged players discover their mana pool does not sustain 4.5 to 5 minutes, they may want to withhold casts in later Phase 1 attempts to ensure that they are able to go full burn the entire duration of Phase 2. In 25-player difficulty, Vezax will continue to cast Searing Flames during the Animus phase. Your interrupt team will need to use either Focus Target or Mouse over Target interrupt macros to prevent Vezax's cast while dealing damage to the Animus. In the 10-player environment, Vezax will not cast Searing Flames while under the effects of the Animus's shield. Deadly Boss Mods requires at least one player target General Vezax to receive Shadow Crash notifications. If you notice the mod stops working in your raid when the Animus spawns, make sure your main tank continues to target Vezax throughout the Animus phase. It does waste the tank's damage, but it will simplify the ranged job. Starting at roughly 25 to 30 applications of Profound Darkness, you'll want to begin rotating your Paladin's raid damage reduction cooldowns. Shadow Aura Mastery, followed by Divine Sacrifice, will help to reduce the damage at the later stages of this encounter. Once the Animus is defeated, the fight becomes very similar to the initial Phase 1, with one key difference. The effects of the Serenite Animus's Profound Darkness will still be active, meaning all shadow damage will be increased several-fold. As such, Shadow Crashes are now quite lethal. Mark of the Faceless damage is classified as physical, meaning it is unchanged. It's also worth noting self-inflicted shadow-based damage, in particular from Shadow or Death, is now much more dangerous. Beyond that, the normal concerns presented by a long, non-hard mode attempt remain. Healers and ranged will be running out of mana, and if deaths during the encounter reduce the number of ranged players too low, you will need to appoint either healers, melee, or the off-tank to move out to provide sufficient Shadow Crash targets. Be sure anyone leaving melee range does not do so immediately before a crash, as it may cause them to become a legal target before getting far enough away to make it to safety.
All right. So basically for this fight, besides what he explained, is that melee have to run, or sorry, range have to run in a crescent moon shape. It mostly goes to the left, just because the amount of the shadow crashes that actually happen. What ends up happening is that melee obviously stay exactly where they're supposed to, but ranged end up moving gradually to the left to this wall here. To this wall. Just the way it ends up happening, there's nothing that you can do about it, but normally, for some reason, I don't know, the way that the ability is programmed is it makes everybody shift to the left that's in the range, whether that be healers or DPS, over to the left-hand side. So we'll end up having to use Shadow Crashes and basically reset the fight to where one group actually runs back to the middle, and then one group runs kind of close to it, and it'll slowly shift to the left. I don't know why it's always done that, even though it's not quote-unquote random, even though it's supposed to be a random casted ability. It's not really, because it always ends up on that direction. I've never had it run over to the right, which is really strange, but that's the entirety of that fight. It's rinse and repeat. It's either you run out of mana or the boss dies. That's really what it comes down to. All right, so this one, if you've never done Yogg 0 Light or 1 Light, you get to pick which buff you get. There's a couple different buffs that you can get. Obviously, we're going to kill on normal the first week, so we're not going to get any of these buffs, but I want to kind of make it aware to everybody about what's going on. Each buff is different from the different guardians, and they come from the different sectors like Freya, Thorum, etc. You get a different buff for each one that you do. So if you skip a boss, then you get a buff, basically. And then you can go back and kill it afterwards. But yeah.
Hello and welcome to the TankSpot Ulduar Raid Guide. My name is Eliana, and in this video I explain the strategy that we use for the 25-man version of One Light in the Darkness, the hard mode needed to complete Glory of the Ulduar Raider. If you would like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to TankSpot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right. You will be automatically notified as we release movies that way.
Is it just me, or is this the shortest movie any of you guys have ever watched? It's a script for sure, whoever said that earlier.
Even more so than in its 10-man version, succeeding in this fight is mainly dependent on your raid's efficiency and synergy. As for raid composition, since this fight isn't very healing intensive, most guilds tend to bring 2 tanks, 4 healers, and 19 DPS. Especially while you're still learning this fight and your efficiency is lacking, you'll need a lot of DPS. In this particular video though, we're running with 1 tank and 5 healers. The fight mechanics remain the same compared to the normal fight, but with 3 keepers down, you lose many buffs that you may have gotten quite used to. For One Light, you'll still have Thorim assist you, but you'll have to make do without the remaining keepers. That means your raid loses the following buffs compared to normal mode: a 30% damage increase, 10% from each keeper, a 25% movement speed increase, a 20% increased healing buff, a 20% damage reduction. Sanity welts, there are none at all. 100 sanity is all you have for the entire fight. And there will be no more ice team saves from Hodir. Additionally, all tentacles in phase 2 attack twice as fast.
Just want to say, just as a call out, you can see her sanity's at 100 in this fight. When this video was made, I think she got down to like 60 or something like that because she's a bad healer. She's not good at not facing the boss, which is the only thing that you have to do in this fight as a healer, is not face the boss. So you contract sanity gaze, which makes you lose sanity. There's a random sanity attack that the boss does from the middle. It isn't right now. Sarah's still up, but when the actual boss comes out, that's when you'll start seeing her sanity go down. As a healer, your sanity getting low, it just means you're looking the wrong direction. Doesn't matter which direction your camera is facing, it's the direction of your actual character. If your face is facing the boss, you will continue to lose sanity. And normally the healers or the melee DPS are the first people to go insane because they're either bad or they just don't give a shit. So that's it.
Fast and cast 3 times as fast. Now, let's go over the various phases. In phase 1, you have to kill 8 guardians of Yogg-Saron near Sarah to bring your health to 0 and trigger phase 2. As you can see here, we choose to dance through the clouds in phase 1, since it eliminates a lot of unnecessary moving of the guardians and chances to kill them too far away from Sarah. However, if your raid members are prone to touching clouds or wandering off by themselves into their own little world far away from any healer, you may instead choose to have your raid remain at the entrance of the room, and have your tank strike in a guardian when it's low on health. Should you choose to dance, your range group needs to remain together as best as they can.
Even on normal mode, I suggest that we decide to dance instead of moving the guardians. I think they should all just stay in the middle. That'll make it easier on the melee DPS, as well as it's not as hard to move as a range. The ones that have the hardest are mages because they're cast times. So
You may want to designate a reliable leader that people can follow to avoid clouds. Also, with that method, your melee need to run out before your guardian dies, or they'll take a big damage hit that may or may not kill them. With either method though, you'll have to have reliable melee interrupters, because you want to reduce outgoing damage as much as you can. You don't have a lot of healers to deal with, so don't stress them too much. Should someone receive both Sarah's Fervor and Sarah's Blessing at the same time, make sure to pay close attention to their health.
Snowing. Now it's gonna snow tomorrow. Oh my god.
What's that?
Yeah, the dogs are just outside and they're all full of snow right now.
Where do you guys live at?
I'm in Minnesota.
I'm in Florida, so I don't ever see snow here.
Yeah, Ari moved from Florida up to Minnesota.
Yeah, we had a pack of coyotes come through the backyard a couple nights ago.
Oh, yeah. Nice. And did you shoot them or just let them go?
No, my son and his friends were in the... We have a separate workshop down there, and they were in there playing D&D, and he heard the things howling, and they came and looked outside, and they took off, but there was a pack of them.
Oh, I see. Arve, are you there?
She stepped away.
Ah, okay, never mind then. I can't pick at her.
After Sarah transforms, phase 2 is triggered. Kill all remaining guardians on the phase change. For phase 2, you have to split your raid into an upstairs and a downstairs team. The downstairs team will consist of 10 people that take the portals that periodically spawn around Yogg. One person downstairs should be a healer unless you're incredibly confident in your abilities. Melee as well as hunters are the most efficient as downstairs DPS. Both teams have to move together as units. This is crucial to success in this phase. The upstairs team should have your tanks, the remaining healers and range DPS. Especially dot classes like Shadow Priest and Affliction Locks are incredibly valuable on Tentacles. Your upstairs team should have the following priority system for the various tentacles that spawn. Constrictor tentacles before Crusher tentacles, before Corruptor tentacles. Freeing people from constrictors is always the #1 priority, and dot classes should be rolling their dots on any tentacle in range. You may choose to tank the Crusher tentacles for a little while to minimize the uptime of diminished power, but make sure your tanks get out in time before the Crusher's focused anger stacks too high. Make sure to watch out for death rays on the ground. They are not candy bars. From the time you see them popping up until they start actually damaging the ground, you have about 5 seconds. Also, you'll want to avoid chaining Malady of the Mind by moving away from the first person that gets targeted by it. The more sanity you have left for phase 3, the better. Dispels, cleanses, and decurses are of utmost importance and will keep your healers upstairs more busy than the actual healing part will. You just can't afford to have a raid member take a chunk of extra damage or be impaired in their movement. The downstairs team should be assigned to specific portals ahead of time, with the exception of brain-linked people. They should just take the portal that's nearest to them to avoid damaging the other person more. They should also be assigned to specific areas in the memory rooms to kill the influence tentacles as quickly as possible. Ideally, you want to take no more than 25 seconds so you have plenty of time to damage the brain. Also, while the gate to the brain room is open, every tentacle upstairs is stunned, which means for the duration, there's no diminished power debuff, and your upstairs team should be able to clear out most, if not even all, of the tentacles before your downstairs team pops out of the brain room. The melee team has 30 seconds in between portal spawns that should be used to help out any close-by Corruptor or Constrictor tentacles, but do make sure that they're ready at their assigned portals before they spawn again. Efficient DPS in the memory rooms is key. You should aim to take Yogg to 30% in no more than 3 portal phases. It is doable in 4, but your upstairs team may get overwhelmed. The healer in the downstairs room should also help DPS the brain. Any DPS is better than none. Watch the Induced Madness timer closely. You can't afford to have melee team members go insane at all. As long as your upstairs DPS is able to keep up with tentacle spawns, you shouldn't have a problem during phase 3. Assign a meetup spot ahead of time so your melee team can walk straight over to the rest of your raid instead of having to look around for them. If you run with less than 2 tanks, set up Hunter misdirect rotations so initial aggro won't kill anyone. We kill the Immortal Guardians between the ranged group and Yogg himself. Usually we have melee assigned to them since they can DPS the Guardians while facing their back to Yogg. The ranged team, and mainly Dot classes, built a brute force of DPS on Yogg himself in phase 3, but depending on whether DPS on either target is lacking, we may ask someone to help out temporarily. As per usual, have healers face away from Yogg at all times to avoid lunatic gaze altogether, and have everyone else watch their sanity closely. If a raid member is low on sanity, it's better to be safe than sorry. While you can do more DPS facing Yogg, you can't really do any when you go insane and get killed by your raid members. Not to mention you may do annoying things such as fear your raid members while mind controlled and have them take additional ticks of lunatic gaze. You really don't have to worry about empowering shadows much unless you're doing alone in the darkness. Just keep burning the guardians quickly as they trickle in and it shouldn't be a problem.
Alright, that's it for that fight. That's basically, in a nutshell, we're going to do it on the easy mode, so we're going to have a bunch of buffs, but fights are essentially the same. Unfortunately, Algalon is the last boss of our little meeting tonight, but it's only on hard mode, because there's no easy mode. It's all the same. He does an absurd amount of melee damage. He hits very hard. And basically the key to this boss fight is black holes. Whether people click on the portals and leave on time or not is really the difference between us living and dying. The longer that you're in the shadow realm, the more chance you are to die. So immediately clicking the portals is a bad choice. Letting his cast timer get a little further is a better choice because it makes sure that you don't die. Unfortunately, there's a cap on the number of people that can go in each portal because they do disappear. But yeah, we'll take a look at it. Here we go.
Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. My name is Darkson, an author at tankspot.com, and in this video I will cover the 10-man strategy for the hard mode only boss, Algalon the Observer. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to Tankspot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right to be automatically notified as we release new movie. The first thing you will notice is the timer at the top of the screen. From the time you first engage him, you have only 1 hour before he despawns for the rest of the raid lockout. Note, this timer starts when you first engage him, not when you open the door. So take some time to study the room and make sure everyone knows what to do before pulling the first time. If you are in combat with him when the timer ends, he will wipe the raid by casting an ability called Ascend to the Heavens, and despawn. Ascend to the Heavens is an ability he does both when his timer expires and he despawns, but also if no one gets hit by or survives Big Bang. If it is triggered by the second cause, he will not despawn, but it hits everyone for 700,000, including people in black holes. What makes this encounter challenging is the amount of damage going out, both the melee damage being done to the tank and the various sources of raid damage. Approximately 15 to 20 seconds into the encounter, Algalon will spawn 4 collapsing stars. These stars have no aggro and float slowly but randomly around the room. They deal 1% of their health to themselves every second. When they die, they do an explosion for 15 to 20,000 shadow damage to everyone in the raid. It can be partially resisted, so make sure to have a paladin or priest for shadow protection. A ranged DPS needs to be assigned to kill these. That person needs to time it so that the explosion is staggered with Cosmic Smash. This allows the healer maximum time to top everyone up. That person must also communicate to the raid when a star is about to die. They must also make sure to call out if anyone will be near the star when it explodes so that that person can move away. This is because the stars leave a void zone, also known as a black hole, on the ground when they die. This void zone is a portal into the dark matter realm. Running through the void zone is the only way to avoid Big Bang. Entering this realm is a complete threat drop on Algalon. You cannot enter this realm with any kind of immunity, such as Anti-Magic Shell or Divine Shield, and using either of those abilities, as well as Cloak of Shadows while inside, will port you out immediately. While in this realm, you suffer 1 to 2,000 arcane damage a second. This realm is also populated by ads called Dark Matter, which will melee you while inside, so make sure to kite them as best you can. This port lasts 10 seconds before you are returned to the normal plane. In addition to collapsing stars, Algalon also spawns constellations. They start spawning about the same time the first tank gets his 4th stack of Phase Punch. They have aggro in the sense they will follow the highest person on threat, but the person they follow is not necessarily the person they cast on. Instead, they cast...
By the way, we need to swap at 4 stacks. Just in case you didn't know, 4 stacks of Phase Punch, we need to swap or you'll just get completely wrecked.
Arcane Barrage on random raid members. Whichever tank is not currently tanking should be taunting these and dragging them over black holes. By doing so, both the Constellation and the black hole despawn. You must be smart about which ones you close though, as you do not want people to get hit by Big Bang because they had to run too far to the black holes that are still up. Every 90 seconds, Algalon will cast Big Bang. It deals between 70 and 90,000 damage. As mentioned earlier, someone must stay out and soak Big Bang to prevent him from ascending. There are several ways of doing this. This person does not have to be the top aggro, they simply have to be outside when the cast finishes. One way of doing it is tank cooldowns, but this prevents tanks from using cooldowns while tanking Algalon himself and could result in tank deaths from normal melee damage. Another way to do this is Shadow Priest with Dispersion. And yet another way to do this is external cooldowns on the tank.
And what we'll be doing is Shadow Priest, since we have 2 of them. It'll be a great way for us to avoid all the damage to the tanks.
Such as GS or Pain Suppression. GS is the most effective as it keeps you at full health, since it's guaranteed to proc. When Big Bang is finished casting, you get ported out immediately, regardless of how long you should have been left phased. Make sure that you position yourself to not be on top of a black hole again.
He didn't say this, but as you see here, you will see that big giant meteor that goes there. That is basically a void zone from KT. If you're standing in there, there's no chance for you to survive because the meteor impact kills you. So you must move out. Same thing as KT. Melee, you guys are the biggest culprits of dying to that. So please be wary.
Yourself to not be on top of a black hole again when you come out, or you will be phased again right away. The final source of raid damage is Cosmic Smash. Every 25 seconds, a random raid member will have a red fissure placed under them. This can target the tank as well, so be prepared to move the boss if this happens to you. You have 4 to 5 seconds to move away from it before it explodes. Smash deals fire damage based off how far away from it you are. Additionally, if it is directly under you at the time of the explosion, you will be shot up into the air and most likely be killed by fall damage. Make sure you have a paladin or a shaman for either fire resist aura or totem, as it is partially resistible. Algalon has 2 melee abilities. The first is called Quantum Strike. This ability is just a normal physical ability that he does on the tank every few seconds. It deals approximately the same damage as an offhand swing. His second melee ability is called Phase Punch. Phase Punch is on a 15-second cooldown and inflicts a moderate amount of arcane damage to the tank. It also applies a 45-second duration stacking debuff. When this debuff reaches 5, the tank is automatically ported as if they had gone into a black hole. The advantage to this is it also removes the debuff completely, but they are then stuck in the dark matter realm for 10 seconds. Phase Punch cannot be dodged, parried, or missed. At 20%, Phase 2 starts. All black holes will despawn, and 4 new ones will appear at the 4 corners of the room. Northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. About half the way between the outer edge and the center of the room. Do not be standing...
At this point, this becomes a DPS burn at 20%. It's how many adds can the tank pick up before he dies. So basically 20% to 0 is a DPS race.
Those spots come the transition. He will still cast Big Bang in this phase, and those portals will still phase you to the other realm. But now they periodically summon an add, now called Unleashed Dark Matter. The off-tank needs to pick them up while the DPS all burn Algalon. Stars no longer spawn because...
This will be where we use Bloodlust, by the way. But yeah, that is the end of the class, and that's the end of the fights for everything in Ulduar.
Yay!
Anybody have questions?
Oh boy.
Not right now.
Well, I'll message you.
I'll message you, okay?
Yeah, I gotta get to bed.
Yeah, it's no problem. Night.
Good night.
I think a lot of that stuff makes sense. It's just we're gonna have to.
Yep.
It's just things we'll have to remind the group.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
appreciate everybody attending, and yeah, we will remind the group, and we'll keep things up to par. But yeah, if you do